So, Denny, we meet again, and welcome to another Delboy stream. We should be live now. It says we are. And Denny and I have decided that we'll collaborate again. A little sort of like mini series of stuff. I've called this episode 1 Laurel and Hardy. We both agreed that Laurel and Hardy is something that not a lot of people talk about now. I'm in a lot of film groups and people still do not talk about much black and white stuff. And yet it was a major influence on me in my childhood. Laurel and Hardy were still in the cinema, believe it or not, for me. But mostly I watched them as reruns on BBC Two at certain times of the year. But we'll get more into that a little bit later on. I just want to introduce my friend Denny. And Denny, I'd just like you to introduce yourself to the world and talk a little bit about what you do on YouTube.
What I do on YouTube, it's more or less like yourself, Del. The only thing I don't do anything movie related, yet I am a collector of films, science fiction, horror mainly. Though I do dabble in a few of the others. My thing with that, though, is really cult television from the past. I do collect a lot of the children's cult television. It's just the nostalgia, not that I really want to watch it. It's just a lot of the nostalgia vibe through that. I do run 2 channels now, 2 retro channels. One is just for text adventures only with graphics. Currently putting together the new one for that one, hopefully February, March. And the one I'm putting together for the Retro Control Centre is Whizball, my all-time favourite Commodore 64 game. So that's coming along well. So little time, but we're getting there. So yeah, as I said, basically, I'll just follow what you do, really. A lot of nostalgia from the past, more or less interest cross. And that's how we've really got to know each other, really, movies, games,
yes,
and videos like that program that used to be.
Yeah. That's absolutely brilliant. And if you didn't catch hold of anything in there, he has his own channel. I do wish or hope that you get more subscribers. If you like what we're doing here, do come back, but definitely look for Denny and subscribe to his channel if you can. A little bit about me, if you people don't know, I have a little channel called Delboy 3K1's Retro Zone. It started off literally 100 weeks ago last Sunday, where I celebrated my 100th blog. It started off as something to leave behind for my nephew and nieces, because I'm a little bit of a hoarder. I don't intend to sell my stuff. And so everything that I've got will be left really for my nephew and nieces, because I'm not married or have any children at this particular stage in my life. I don't think that will change. And so I needed to leave something behind that they could see what their uncle looked like, what he was into. At the end of my blogs, I show off the things that I've bought this week. They're mostly steelbook films and games. And yes, I cover just about everything. That's computers, consoles, games, comic books, films, TV, my blog, and I do little capsules, about my arcade years, which I've got to go back to, my classic 8-bit years, the intention of me doing my 16-bit years, and every now and again I go to my Steam library and put out a few games there just to frighten everybody and go, what, he means he still plays this stuff now? Yes, I do. I'm a big kid. That's the one thing I will say about myself. I'm a big kid. So that's a little bit about me. We've already got some comments. We haven't got too many, but we've got some already here. We might as well show these to the world. Look, we've got one from Colin Thompson. Laurel and Hardy, my favorite comedy duo. What a lovely thing to know. Thank you very much, Colin. It is definitely, I believe, by the end of this show, there'll be no doubt they're definitely our favorite comedy duo. Thank you for being here. Then we've got Danny Jukes. Yes, a friend of my channel. I think a friend of yours, Denny. Hi, how are you doing? I am good. That's good to know. We always want to make sure that people are okay. We're only at the beginning of this year of 2024, but Nobody wants to hear any bad stories at the moment, even though I'm sure there's plenty. And then we've got Ian Hill, the Ramblings, my mate from Yorkshire. Hi, Delboy, Denny. Great to see you both doing this. Yes, my pleasure, Ian. You never know. We might invite you on. You know, we might scare you, because I know that you're a biggie on TV and films, Hammer horror, everything. Love your stuff. You're doing the X-Files at the moment. You've been doing your top 10 Blondie singles, all sorts of stuff. I've been watching avidly. Keep up the good work there, matey. And then the last one at the moment is from Denny is I have a big Steam library. That's when he's talking about the games that I've just said. So, Denny, where do we start with Laurel and Hardy? I'm going to let you start. I've got a lot of technical detail that I'd like to get out, but maybe I'll do that after you do where you want to start with. Laurel.
Yeah, I'll start at the beginning about how I come to like Laurel and Hardy. But the one thing I'm going to start with, remember in the 1980s when they all come out with this alternative brand of comedy?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Now, to me, correct me if I'm wrong, comedy is funny or it's not funny. There's nothing alternative about comedy. It's funny. And you used to have so many double acts. I mean, Morecambe and Wise, you know, all the way, Bernie Winters and Mike Wint, all the way down to today, Hale and Pace. Nobody has ever beaten these two guys. These guys, I mean, you know, you speak about Morecambe and Wise, how fantastic they were. And they were. You couldn't touch them in their heyday. But these guys were just, where Morecambe and Wise was there, these guys was up here. You'll never, ever beat Laurel and Hardy. They were just perfect. Also, that's how all the stars aligned at that particular time. And the co-stars as well made it what it was. They all worked together, and you can go the next 1,000, 2,000 years. These guys will still be the best, because every time you keep seeing the same short, the same film, you'll still be laughing at the same gags. Like Tommy Cooper, he used to have the same act, but people used to laugh time and again because they were so funny. I mean, I'm laughing now because I'm just remembering some of the things I was watching last night. You know, these guys were brilliant. But I remember, I think that how I got into Laurel and Hardy was when I used to be on school holidays with my nan. And I always used to, the memories that come flooding back to me, my dad used to drop me off. And before my nan used to get up, I used to put the telly on. And I'm talking back to the time when teletext had just come out, you know, the next big thing. And I always remember they used to put on like Robinson Crusoe and all that. They used to have a Laurel and Hardy in the morning. And that's how I got to notice them. And now over the years, I just watch more and more. And like yourself, the repeater BBC Two, when they run their complete catalogue over the night times, about 6 o'clock, I think it was. And that's when I really got big into them. And it's really about, you know, I've got to thank my nan really more than anything. It's fantastic memories, remembering it like my school holidays and watching Laurel and Hardy and Harold Lloyd, you know, that was all part of growing up. I remember after that as well, my friend, if he's still out there, he's Tony Weller, his name was. And we went to Blackpool because he loved Laurel and Hardy as well. Between me and him, we used to take all the sketches off what they used to do, some of the sayings and all that. And it was brilliant work, you know, being at work in the 80s with Tony, because we'd always be taking them off and taking the mick out of each other. And we went to Blackpool and they used to have this exhibition on there. And I remember we went in and nobody had hardly been in all day. And this lovely chap who was running it, he just put what films we wanted on, and we had a fantastic afternoon just watching the old films. It's great memories to think of, you know, absolutely fantastic. But yeah, that's like the early genesis from what I remember and how I got into them.
Yeah. Brilliant. Yes, well, I've got a similar sort of background, but I'm going to get some of the what I call the stuffy stuff out of the way first. You know, a little bit of history about Laurel and Hardy, just in case nobody really knows. But I mean, their legacy continues today. They're in the Film History Museum. Their stuff is protected. So anyway, let's talk a little bit then. Just get the technical stuff out of the way. Stan Laurel, born 1890, died 1965, from the UK. Oliver Hardy, born 1892, died a little bit earlier, 1957, born in the South, I believe, of America. The two of them worked together and worked in 106 films between 1921 and 1951. They did 34 silent shorts. They did 45 sound shorts. So sound had just come in. So they went from the silent to the sound era. And 27 full-length features. That's what we call a movie these days, a full-length film. The first film together was Lucky Dog, 1921, although they weren't known as Laurel and Hardy at that time. They were just working for the Hal Roach studio as budding actors. As Laurel and Hardy, they joined in 1927 in their first film together as a team, the second 100 years. Hal Roach Studios, they worked for them between 1921 and 1940. In 1941, they split and did 8 films between 1941 and 1945, mostly for 20th Century Fox, but also for Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer. After that, they started to do stage shows. They came over and did a huge campaign over in Britain. This was during a period where they were trying to get together and get back into films, for which they did their last film in 1951, which is called Atoll K. Most of this stuff you can actually see on YouTube now. I believe YouTube seems to have a license to let you see it. But my recommendation is that you get this on physical media. There is a lovely, expensive box set that you can get, but they've done a cheaper branded version of it, which is just in a sort of cheaper wrapping, really. It just doesn't look quite as nice. Very, very reasonable. You're looking at around 20-30 pounds. You can sometimes see it in the sales below 20 pounds, an absolute bargain. So I do recommend physical media. The interesting thing I think about it with Laurel and Hardy is the music. Things I've discovered about the music with Laurel and Hardy is it's very integral. They have a main theme, and that was done by the musical director for Hal Roach. His name was T. Marvin Hatley, and he did a tune called Dance of the Cuckoos, which is played really at the beginning of every one of their shorts, especially around the sound era. But somebody that's not mentioned an awful lot is somebody called Bo Hedges. He did little snips of tunes. They were mostly in the sound era. But he came out with tracks called Bells on a Sunday afternoon, onto the show. Here we go. They're just tracks. You can buy a CD. There are 62 cues on that CD, just showing how much of a music they did in there. You'll recognize that when you're playing the shorts, music is repeated. It is integral. So one of the things that I thought was well known about Laurel and Hardy was this little tune that played with tubular bells. You can't miss it. If you ever watch a short and you're listening and watching a short, you'll know that they play this tune and it starts off with little tubular bells. It goes ding, 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 and then you'll know it, right? You're instantly into a Laurel and Hardy film. It's that integral. So that's the technical stuff. I just wanted to get that technical stuff out of the way because we don't really need to touch upon technical stuff. There you go. Look, I put my pad down. I'm not looking at it. I'll go into my sort of nostalgia. So it's a little bit similar to yours, Denny. Might have been a little bit earlier because my mother at a very early age took me to film club, which was at the Odeon in my hometown, and they used to show Disney cartoons and all that sort of stuff, but they would show Flash Gordon and serials and stuff like that, but there will always be a week where they would put on a Laurel and Hardy short. They were only the sound ones, at the cinema, funnily enough. And the silent era, I only came across really with the BBC reruns and through documentaries that the BBC have done over the years, talking about that lovely period, you know, where we had Laurel and Hardy in silence, we had Charlie Chaplin, we had Buster Keaton, we had, you know, amongst many Keystone Cops, because this is where cinema for me began. And I was very interested whether there was sound or not. I didn't care. I was engrossed. It was almost like I was going to get square eyes. But my love of Laurel and Hardy really, really grew with the reruns, like you talked about. BBC Two seemed to be the best place to go to watch Laurel and Hardy. I tried to do some information about this. Apparently, the last time Laurel and Hardy has been shown on TV was on BBC Two. It was at Christmas in 2005.
Wow.
It looks very much like the BBC lost their license and didn't renew because of physical media. So they didn't continue, but they showed them around Christmas time. They showed them in the mornings leading up to Christmas, that lovely period where the Radio Times would come out and they'd tell you 5 days before Christmas, and then there'd be Christmas. You'd have the bit in between Christmas, you'd have New Year's, and then you'd have to buy yourself a new Radio Times. And in those couple of days before Christmas, there would be Laurel and Hardy at something like 9:30 in the morning on a BBC Two, showing some of those quintessential shorts that we'll discuss of which ones are our favorites. My dad watched them with me. He was a man who worked at that period of time in a factory. So he was on shift work, 6 till 2, 2 till 10, sometimes nights. So if something was on at 9:30 in the morning and it was Laurel and Hardy, he'd watch it then. If he was on 6 till 2, 6 o'clock, we'd be sitting down for our dinner. Laurel and Hardy would come on, he'd watch it with me. He was that type of person that didn't watch a lot of films. He wasn't a big filmy. He liked his music, but there were things that he loved. He didn't really talk too much about whether he watched them as a kid. My father was born just before 1940, so it could well be that he did see things at the cinema because they would be repeating those things during the war. And afterwards. So that, you know, I grew a bond through music and a few things with my father because he was more a sportsman than I was. I was no good at football, wasn't really interested in football till later on, but I loved cricket. So of course we bonded over cricket, but he loved fishing, loved going out into the country, loved going fishing, all of that sort of stuff. And I've got a funny feeling that he liked Laurel and Hardy because Laurel and Hardy is a back to basics comedy duo where they're out in the outback or they are high society and have got money. There is no sort of like in between. They came out at a time where there was a class system. Yeah. But I think they never came across as a class, even when they were acting as aristocrats or acting as vagabonds. I never really saw them as class. Like, we'll talk about this a little bit later on as well, Denny. Being in bed together, we never thought of them as being gay.
That's correct, yeah.
And I think that that's a sign of the times that people really couldn't afford their own place. That it was not strange for people to share a bed in a hotel or something because money just wasn't there. And I'm going to shut up for a minute because some people have commented. And I've got a funny feeling I've been talking for far too long. So I've got to go back to where we were. And the next one to show is, well, believe it or not, Mainmeister. Now, he was going to be a guest. So let's see what he's put. He's got evening lads, literally just got in after my trip to Preston. That was the reason why he couldn't come on. Bless you, Alan. Absolutely knackered. Looking forward to listening into this as I'm a huge fan of Laurel and Hardy. And hey, if you still feel like coming on, you have got an open invite, Alan. We'd love to hear what you have to say about it, but I'm so glad you're here. I do know that you're a huge Laurel and Hardy fan, and I hope you do get to love this stream. So we'll move on, and we've got someone called Arman27. Hello, all hope everything is well. Yes, it is. We hope everything is all well with you as well. That's all we want from a show like this, is that we don't bore you to death. That's the one thing that I'm not. The one thing that I get sweats over is, oh, did we die a death there or what? Then we've got Gary T. Greetings. This channel was recommended, so I just subbed. Wow, thank you so much. Yeah, brilliant. Laurel and Hardy are as funny now as ever. They never get old. They're immortal. And that, I couldn't explain that better than in those words. I think immortality comes in. As much as I'd love to portray Laurel and Hardy to my friends, on the film side of things that I do, they know of them, but they don't watch them. I find that a great shame. Laurel and Hardy, I think, will forever go through time and never be lost. They left their mark, and it's amazing. Over 106 films. I think there are directors that have done more than that even now, and I think their legacy will still never be like Laurel. I will say that. Thank you very much for being here, Gary. So we move on, and we've got Bonsai Master. Sorry I'm late. I didn't realize you were late. There's no such thing as late in a stream. You can watch it in a rerun, just like Laurel and Hardy. We're immortalized. We're not going. There you are. There, I seem to have been able to tie that one in, Denny. I don't know whether I got away with it, but there we go. And then we've got Colin Thompson, Marx Brothers, Three Stooges. They're all great. Yeah, can't say better than that. I mean, everybody's got their favorites. I mentioned a few. I was never the biggest Charlie Chaplin fan, but even he is tied with Stan Laurel. They operated in the same vaudeville, if I think is what they called it back then. They came over. Stan came over with Charlie Chaplin on the same boat, playing in the same party for vaudeville, but Charlie Chaplin grew to fame much quicker than Stan Laurel did. And in fact, if I remember rightly, Stan Laurel imitated Charlie Chaplin in early films. I remember rightly. There are pictures I've got in my book. By the way, this is the book I've got of Laurel and Hardy. It's called The Magic Behind the Movies. I do recommend that book. I think you've got your own recommendation, haven't you, Denny?
Yeah, this is a fantastic book. Every single film from the beginning to the end. Absolutely wonderful. All colours. Sorry, all black and white films. Colours, yeah. Yeah.
Black and white's a colour, isn't it?
Yeah, here's another here. There you go. Well, there was some actually done in colour, but that's another subject.
Oh, yeah. We might touch upon that. But is that book out of print?
That I don't know. I would have. To be honest, I don't know. But
do you know if it was published a long time ago? Did you pick it up?
Just have a look. No, 1990. Oh, copyright 75, and then this one was 1996. So
there might be a possibility that it's out of print. I have to say that this one is still available. This one I bought about 4 or 5 years ago. This one was originally. This is a third printing that I've got here, but it's dated 1987 as the first print. Yeah. So 1987. But this one you can get on Amazon still. It is quite an expensive book. The hardcover is well gone. You can only get paperbacks. Yeah. That's what they tend to do these days. If a book was sold really well, they do it as paperback. And then the hardback becomes so highly sought after, you'll probably find only libraries have got it. You know what I mean? Yeah. And that's if you can find a library. I don't think my town's got a library anymore.
I mean, the only other thing I can really recommend to people if they're really into it is obviously very expensive. It's the full restorations, 2K print, obviously from it's 4K, but they're putting it out in 2K, and there's quite a lot on the back there. Quite a lot of shorts, but this originally when I had this, it was £80.
Wow.
It was very expensive, but what the beauty of the films is they restore them. You know, the cue cards in the, you know, when it opens up, they don't like, you know, when things are put into syndication, now they're all the same thing. They restore the originals, and they're completely different to what you've noticed before. So if you're really into Laurel and Hardy, well, they're well worth the money. I would totally recommend getting that. But it's American release only, that one. By the way.
Are they going to do them all? Do you think, Denny?
I'm restoring them bit by bit, but that's been out 3 years now. But they are restoring them all bit by bit, and they are going to release them. But whether they just release that then a full box set after, I don't know. But as they're making money, I'm doing more and more and more. And I fully recommend, because there's alternative ones on there. Full version, brilliant.
Yeah, just going back to the DVD set, it's got a lot of information in that DVD set. And the one thing that you'll notice, that after each of the sound versions, the sound era of the shorts, they tell you that the Kirschman group have painstakingly restored the films from their 35mm originals as best as possible and put them on safety film. And that's the important aspect of that. They've gone into the history of film. They're protected, preserved. They're on safety film, which means that if somebody does come along, wants the license and so forth, to restore these to 4K, then they are on those safety films. There are do you know how many films are not available? I think there three out of the 106. Isn't there 3 films?
I did know them once upon a time. I think it's either 2 or 3. There was 4, but on that particular box set, it's on that particular release, they've got the Battle of the Century. That was only available in 1 reel, and I found the other 2 reels. It's still missing a slight little bit, but the old custard pie fight has been restored to its old glory. And that was from a private collection, believe it or not. So anything is possible to find out there. Doctor Who. You know, anything is possible to find. So that's as you obviously come to find later, I'm not really one for silence, but that's one particular one I do want to see, because it's obviously been found, fully restored, and it was a famous one, the Battle of the Century, it's called, with the pie fight. So that's one I shall look forward to watching.
So I believe that it's very difficult to say exactly whether we'll get these 3 films, and not being that technically minded on Laurel and Hardy, because I haven't looked in a long time, those 3 films could actually be partial, because they did things on reels back then.
That's right.
There were 2 reels per short. I know for a fact that for a long time in the museums, they only had 1 reel of stuff, which meant that they didn't have the whole film, and so therefore they would count it as lost. But then as they found the second reel, they've put them together. Sometimes the second reel has come from Germany, and then they've redubbed it back, and then you've got the full film again. I also know that they did... there was one that they found that was in Germany. I can't quite remember what the story was. It is one of my favorites, so it will come back to me, I'm sure, by the middle of this broadcast, where they did an alternative end. So they actually did the one that we all recognize, but then they put an ending in, which was a bit more subdued. And most people then turn around and say, which one is the quintessential one then? Is it the one with the alternative end that we're not quite familiar with, or is it the one that we're all sort of familiar with before they found this other reel?
But that happened quite a lot, though, didn't it? On quite a few of the shorts, they did alternative versions for different countries, and then they employed actors from their own country in the shorts. So there are a lot of different ones, and that's what you'll find on a lot of the DVDs as well. If them still being kept, of course, obviously.
Yeah. So I'm just going to read out some more stuff, because it's just getting longer and longer and longer, and we're sort of like answering questions as we're going along. So the next one we've got is Marx Brothers. We've just done that one, haven't we? So we go to Colin Thompson. The music is brilliant in their films. Yes. And I think it's an important thing. I wanted to definitely make sure that the music was mentioned in an earlier on part, because just like anything, silent movies would be done slightly differently. You would have a projection house and you'd have an organist, and he would be playing music. Now, as far as I know, not knowing my history that well, they were given sheet music that was which was provided by the film house that made the film as a recommendation, but the organist could also be freewheeling to play whatever he wanted. If he saw something moving really fast, he had the pure right to actually play a fast piece on the organ that's nothing like on the sheet music. Like I say, it's very interesting to look back at these things, because wouldn't it be weird these days that you went to the pictures, go to a VUE, and suddenly an organ suddenly started appearing while you're watching your Tom Cruise Mission Impossible flick? Wouldn't it be really weird to go back to those sort of days? So we then go to Danny Jukes. I have 3 box sets. The big box with all the DVD cases in it. Yes, there is that one. Like I say, many box sets around. I would absolutely love it if they did actually move it up to the Blu-ray standard. I know that 4K is around, and it's gathering up speed and pace, but just to get a Blu-ray of it would be high enough for me to go, wow, look at that pristine image.
But you've got to think of the original resolution of the films as well. It wouldn't get any better than what you were already looking at anyway, would it, Ray?
Yeah, I do look at it that when we talk about resolution, we talk about screen dots and all that sort of stuff. It is on film. You could take the negative, you could take the negative and put it into whatever resolution you like. But you're quite right, though, Denny, because your eye can only pick up so much information, and black and white doesn't have a color over the top of that. So basically, it can look pin sharp, even at a lower resolution. If you look at a black and white picture and then you look at a color picture, you will see there's probably more definition in the black and white. It just looks crisper. You see more dark, more shadows. That's why the medium, the hoity-toity people that use cameras prefer the black and white medium. It just, I've always thought that anyway. I'm probably totally wrong, and I'm out of my depth when I'm talking about that. But we move on. We've got Colin Thompson. I have a large brass statue of Laurel and Hardy. Yes, now we have a statue in Britain, don't we, of Stan Laurel? I know he's got a placard outside his house, but isn't there a Laurel and Hardy or just a Stan Laurel bust or figurine in one of the cities for Laurel and Hardy? Not sure. I thought it was around near the seaside, but I'm not sure. It's because when they did their tour in the 50s, I'm pretty sure that there was a commission. It was so successful, that tour. It's not really portrayed as successful either in the bioepic film, that Coogan did, that you've got your own little box there if you want to show it off, that Stan and Ollie.
Yeah. Fantastic film. Brilliant film. It's one of the best parts he's ever played, though.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. But when you look at that, it seems very much like it was very hard going to get the numbers in for the stage show. It wasn't working very well. It did become very successful, but I think they did 2 tours over here, and I think that one was the last tour, and that's why it's probably quite shown as not quite as successful, or it took a while to get them going again. When you're out of sight, you're out of mind. That's sort of what was going around at that particular stage. So, you have a large brass statue of Laurel and Hardy. Brilliant. I am jealous. I do love my statues. Anybody that looks at my channel knows I like my statues.
Yeah, I love statues.
So then we move on. Seb's place.
Hello, Seb.
Hello, Seb. My dad had 8mm cine film camera that he would record family holidays on, silent, of course. But we also had a bunch of 8mm reels, which were mainly Laurel and Hardy silent movies. We have to remember that before VHS and us recording off of the TV, there were certain people that were rich, like Seb. No, I'm only joking. Not rich. There's certain people that had cine cameras and were enthusiasts and had loved to have reeled film, and they would have, 8mm, 16mm copies of these films because they would sell them to the public, and they would be copies onto 8mm cine film. In the same way that I wanted my Spider-Man collection to be a cartoon, and I could not get the cartoon for love nor money because there was no such thing as VHS, and I had something called a viewfinder. I'm pretty sure people will remember the viewfinder if you're of a certain age, and you would put these reels in, which would have little cells in, and you would be able to go through each cell, watching it go by, and later on that would turn into a torch projector, where you would put a cartridge in, and you would be able to broadcast it onto your wall. Much to my sister's disgust, because I used to do it when she was trying to sleep, and there you are. That was me and my love-hate relationship with my sister starting off. So we didn't have cine film, but even back then I wanted to get as much as I could in regards to projecting images and so forth. And these often had no sound. There was no speaker in these projectors. Even when the cinemas were playing Laurel and Hardy stuff in sound, it was a record that was synced to the wax film negative. So basically, that's how our grandparents that saw these in the 30s would watch Laurel and Hardy. A synced record to an image. There you are. So we move on in Hill the Ramblings. My dad got me into Laurel and Hardy through the small home movie reels. He saw them on the 1952 tour at the Empire in Leeds. Wow. I knew that they did really well in the North. That's definitely shown in that bioepic that you've got there. They did a beauty contest and all sorts of stuff that they did in seasides, and they definitely look North seasides, like Scarborough and all that sort of stuff. I'm useless at geography. I'll probably just mention the South one there, so I'm probably not doing very well. So, but you know what I mean, like Blackpool and so forth. So Seb continues, I loved watching them on the big projector screen on repeat. Happy memories. I mean, I wish I did have the big projector. Mine, it was the television we got from multi-broadcast or one of those with the BBC. And if I went to the cinema, I really was in luxury, because then I would be watching it at a pure cinema house on the big screen. And you know what that's like. I mean, you're seeing your heroes blown up to, 75 or whatever it is. So yeah, that I was in the lap of luxury back then. Right, so I don't know how far we're going. Colin Thompson, twice 2 in the background. So funny. It's not the soup that's making the noise.
It's my asthma.
Well, I'm pretty sure Stan Laurel would have probably written that one down and weaved it in, because we'll have to do that as well. I want to talk a little bit about the writing of Laurel and Hardy, because I'm confused by it. So we'll talk about it right here. These books are lovely, and I haven't read them all the way through. And I've watched documentaries, and I know that Stan Laurel was the more businessman of the two, wasn't he? Oliver Hardy loved his art, played the character, but then he felt nothing towards the picture, and also just wanted to get onto the golf course. He was a member of the Howell Roach golf course that was in the back lot, and that's where he'd just want to spend all his time, while Stan Laurel wanted to craft the art and keep the partnership going, and was the businessman. And he was a gag man. He wrote gags. But a lot of the books that I've read, they quote the writing to other writers, and I don't see much where it says this was written by Stan Laurel. And I don't know if he had a pen name, but it seems very much like Stan would take a script and bend it, but then would become uncredited. Is that wrong to say that, or?
So the thing is, what you got to understand, these like Hal Roach, he was in, he was the main man, wasn't he? He was the big man. Now I'm going to go into something like a side topic here, which is sort of connects. Yeah, Ozzy Osbourne, he had a guitarist called J.K. Lee, and he had the Bark at the Moon album. I think everybody knows the Bark at the Moon album. J.K. Lee actually wrote all the songs, all of them, but then he had to carry on with him. Sharon Osbourne made him sign them all over to him, so they were his property.
Oh.
There was things like that going on in the background. They reckon Stan was writing all this, but then he had to sign them over to Hal Roach from, obviously, because it was his gig. He was paying for everything. So more or less, it was the same thing. He was writing them, but that was always credited to Hal Roach through all the different pen names. That's how some of the things like from the past I seem to remember. Whether it's right, I don't know. But I know these things go on where, like Ozzy Osbourne was he's the main man of that particular thing. But then other people, if they want to work with, they have to sign it over. So all the all the money then goes back to Ozzy Osbourne. Like the money will go to Hal Roach, then it'll filter down to the actors. You know,
right.
So whether it's right, I don't know. But I have read.
It sounds about right. If you remember rightly in that bioepic as well, it starts off with the split from Hal Roach. It was well known, I think, in the industry that Stan Laurel and Oliver Hardy didn't have a joint contract. They had individual contracts. And I think Hal Roach hated the fact that Stan tried to take more control of the partnership. He wanted to be in total control. So there was a split for a short period of time where Stan left Hal Roach Studios, but Oliver Hardy stayed for another year. And I think it was because it's not because he wanted to stay, it was because his contract went on for a bit longer than Stan's, because they had different end clauses at the end, you know, where their contract officially ended. So he was forced to make films.
But think about just think about this though. When they made films for 20th Century Fox and Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, the writing was done by the studio, and that wasn't funny at all, was they? They were awful, absolutely awful. Stan had nothing to do with them, so it sort of ties in, really. You know, a lot of the gags were more or less the same. That was Stan's. And let's be honest, he was the one. He was the gag man, and you could tell, couldn't you? Really, once it was took away from him, you could tell absolutely 100%. You know,
looking at the documentary of that I watch an awful lot, by the way, on Sky documentaries or Sky Arts. They have Laurel and Hardy, you know, their life in films. It's a 2-hour documentary. I recommend anybody go watch that, and you can buy it on DVD as well. There's I forgot where I was going to go with this. There is a segment in it that turns around and talks about the fact that Stan continued to write skits long after the partnership ended. He just liked to write. He would always be at the typewriter thinking of another gag and never gave it to anybody. And he was so beloved by the comedians of the time. People like Dick Van Dyke, I think, was a big fan of Stan Laurel. Jerry Lewis was. They would ask him to write, but he wouldn't. He just wrote for Laurel and Hardy, even though you know, Oliver Hardy, you know, had long gone. He wasn't in the best of health. They did try to get him into a film called The Mad World, which he turned down. He said, "No, I don't want to act. My acting was with my friend. My friend is now gone, so I do not wish to act anymore." And they gave it to somebody else, which is a great shame. But I think it just adds to that chemistry where we go, you know, how big a friendship did they have? Because there's one side of a documentary that says they weren't really that friends. They lived their own separate lives. They had their own separate demons. But it looks very much like in later life, they were close, incredibly close, up until the end, which is great. Because I think you have to, if you think about it, they're in a business. They were joined together in a business. So they don't necessarily have to be friends off
Well,
camera, do you?
but that ties into another thing, Del, as well. I don't know whether everybody remembers Nearest and Dearest, Jimmy Jewell and Hilda Baker. Now,
Oh yeah,
if you watch those two, right, it's the similar sort of double act that play off each other. They hated each other,
yeah,
absolutely loathed each other, but they used to laugh at each other's gags. The professionalism was there,
yeah,
that absolutely fantastic. That that's one thing I suppose about today. If they don't like each other, it's you can tell. But back then, it's like that double act. Even though they fell out, it was still
yeah.
there. You know what I mean?
Hilda Baker, wasn't it?
Hilda Baker and Jimmy Jewell
Yeah.
was the one.
I do know that they hated each other. I do know that they had a professional relationship. I do know that Jimmy Jewell wanted to leave a lot earlier than they did.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
do know that Hilda Baker, when they couldn't work together, started off another show that was set in London, wasn't it, in a pub?
Not
Um,
on Your Nelly.
Not on Your Nelly. So they moved from the pickling factory to a
That's
pub
it.
in London, which he was looking after his dad. And she killed her own career. She basically had an accident on set, blamed everybody around her. She was off for so long that they stopped production. When they came back, they did 2 episodes and cancelled the whole thing, and that was pretty much the last you ever
Yeah.
heard of Hilda Baker. I do know that story very well, but that's for another time. Maybe
Yeah, I'm just saying
maybe
it's just,
we'll do a documentary.
people that can fall out, but when the chemistry's there, you know, it's there, and it was like them two. They were good friends to begin with, and but the thing is, they loved each other. Where these two come back
Yeah.
together, it's that was what was so good about these people. Brilliant.
So we'll move on, I think. Look, we've got some more going on here. Look, Ian Hill, The Ramblings. I remember one of the reels was
Right.
the Hooskow, 1929. There's a great food fight in it. And we were talking about that, weren't we? Just briefly before we started, saying that the silence were full of fights. It's almost like every single short they ever did would have some fight in it, whether it be a custard pie fight, whether it be kick somebody up the arse fight, or whatever it was.
Yeah.
There would be a major, the whole town gets together and have one massive, great big fight. You know what I mean? That's how it would end.
I noticed something else about the silence as well. Did you notice they used to put a lot of eyeliner on themselves as well to accentuate the scene as well, which they didn't do on the talkies?
Yeah. I don't know
Yeah.
if that's because of the quality of the film they used, though, because remember that would have been there is the talkies began 2930 and the early stuff is 1921, and there is a huge 8 or so years of using certain sort of stock footage of film. But I do know that the cameras would have gotten better as well through that. And as that changed, the lights would have changed, when it comes to the light that captures, which they would have used. So to get somebody to have a white face, it would be with white makeup to bring that up, and it's almost like they glowed.
Like a ghost.
And then later on, Hal Roach would probably have great big massive warehouses turned into what he calls his studio, and he would have lights, and that means that you could get light and shadow, and therefore the picture would be so much better because they'd have a different, like I say, a different film stock. It's just one of those gradual increases. But I'm with you. Yes, indeed. It was almost like Charlie Chaplin succeeded because he was in vaudeville. And in vaudeville, he learned to do sleight of hand. He knew how to extenuate with his hands, his facial expressions, his movement, making sure that every film shot that you took would have been centered on the bit that he wanted to extenuate on. And we were going to talk about that a little bit later on, weren't we, with Ollie, with his facial expressions.
Yeah. His mannerisms.
We'll move on for now from this because I don't know quite how many comments we got. Oh, no, actually, we haven't got that many now. So, Bonsai Master. Apparently, Stan Laurel lived on Stonelaw Road, which is just down the road from me, as I live in Rutherglen, Glasgow. Didn't he live in Alverton? There's a plaque outside his house, isn't he? And he visited it when he came over here, didn't he, into the UK? He said it was his greatest day of his life was going back to where he was born. Not sure. I think it was Alverton, but so glad that he's not far from you. Do you go? I'd love to know. Do you go past the house very often? Does it look now the same? Is that placard still there? I must admit, I have not gone round England and visited famous named people's houses like the Beatles and that. I've never felt the need to go visit graves of people that I used to watch on TV and all that sort of stuff. I'm not that macabre, to be quite honest. Have you done any of that, Denny? Going around seeing where people were born and
Well, now the nearest I've got to the nearest I've got to that is going to Ludlow and seeing where they used to do crash and zap. That's about as far as I got with such thing like that.
I mean, I know that there's a Eric Morecambe statue, isn't there? And it's
Yeah,
famous.
yeah.
But I haven't gone there just to get a picture of me next to next to Eric Morecambe's statue. I've never been that inclined to do that. And yet I lived in Manchester for 7 years, which would have meant I was closer at that point to actually do something like that. But I never did. You know, I only went to Blackpool, I think, twice when I was in Manchester. In fact, I probably went to Blackpool more times from my home address now than I did when I was actually only 30 miles from it, you know, in Manchester. So same with Liverpool. I could have gone to Liverpool. I mean, it's a hop, skip, and a jump from Manchester when you consider where I live now.
Yeah.
Did I go ever? No. Did I want to go and see the sets where the liver birds were screaming? No, didn't really think about it. It was more about doing my job and then getting through the weekend with no money to get to until you got to the end of the month, got paid, and then did it all again for about 7 years. I was a single man with a single mortgage, you know, and there you are. It was a bit hard going. Let's move on. So we've got Gary T. There's a Laurel and Hardy statue in Ulverston. Do you know where Ulverston is? Oh, my geography is terrible.
Oh, you're asking me.
Brilliant. So it looks very much like there are some pretty impressive statues around. I mean, there's two that have been sort of like mentioned. One inside someone's house and one in Ulverston. I don't think we're going to get to the many that are inside people's houses. I think they'll keep them a bit private.
Well, I wouldn't put them past it, because I used to know somebody who used to have the full-size Dalek in their house. So anything's possible, mate. Anything's possible.
I've known some people that are really big Disney collectors, and they've got huge Mickey Mouse sort of like they're sort of like not they're made out of plastic or something or whatever. They used to be stands outside shops or something, you know.
Yeah.
And they bought those things and they've got them in their houses, and I'm going, really weird. It's like garden furniture, right? But I never really thought about that, you know, having like something from The Prisoner, having the big chess set in the garden. No, I haven't really never really thought about it. You know what I mean? But that's brilliant. So then we've got Cy saying there's also a statue in North Shields. He lived there when he was young. He got about a bit, didn't he? Flipping heck. Then again, they moved around an awful lot during that period. I mean, we are talking really rough, horrible times. I think Stan Laurel's father was in entertainment, if I remember rightly. He was an entertainment manager for a theatre, and that's how he got into working on the stage as a young actor. As a child, he was a child actor. I think his mother was a singer in vaudeville. So, yeah, he did come from that sort of like background. So, yeah. And then we've got Cy Robson that's saying of Stan Laurel, that's from that one. There is a statue of North Shields. So, yeah, so there is just one of Stan Laurel. I'd be surprised, actually, if there were many of Oliver Hardy over here other than to celebrate their partnership, because Oliver Hardy is an American. He will have statues, I'm pretty sure, over where he was born from, because he was a southern gentleman, wasn't he? He was from the South. He moved to Florida to where films were being made, and then moved to Hollywood when everything all moved to Hollywood to make films. So he followed the whole thing, I think, from its inception. That's all he ever wanted to do. So anyway, that's all the comments out the way, and we've talked a little bit about technical and all of that sort of stuff. So I suppose we ought to get into talking a little bit about them, I suppose.
Yeah.
Now, I know you weren't big in regards to the silent bits, but do you want to just talk a little bit about the silent era and your nostalgia side of the side, even if it's just for a small bit? Maybe it'd be just one film that they did that just sticks out in the brain.
I've got to be honest with you, it was something I never really bothered with, because silence never really bothered me. Again, going back to the time when I used to sit with my nan, my nostalgia about silence was about Harold Lloyd. That was, I remember the theme tune to that. Hooray for Harold Lloyd! Da, 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 da,
Yeah.
And that was the only silent I used to watch, because when I was younger, it was more the talkies. Then I never really watched any, and I mean, I watched one going back years, and it just didn't do it for me. Don't ask me why. It just didn't do it for me. It was only when they started to talk, because I do love physical comedy. I love physical comedy, but when the gags come in with it as well, what was that? What was that thing they done on BBC One? It was physical comedy. Not Matilda. What was her name now? It was this big gangly woman who was all over the place. Physical comedy, for what was her name? Beginnings with M. Oh,
N for Nelly.
M.
Oh, M.
M for mother. Melissa or something. But it was gaming about falling over, and it was physical comedy, but the element of the gags was missing. She was a comedian, comedian, yeah.
Is she the one who really likes Morecambe and Wise, and she was also the cleaner in Not Going Out?
Oh God, I never watched Not Going Out. What was her name?
Miranda, I think.
Miranda, that's it. Miranda.
Yeah.
I mean, that's physical comedy, but there's now gags, a type of comedy. You know what I mean?
And if she does talk, it's usually got some innuendo or swearing in it.
Yeah, I mean, I remember the odd one or two things, like the how do you call it, the who scales, with the I remember the custard pie scenes.
Yeah,
obviously it wasn't Battle of the Century because it was missing at that point.
right.
But nothing really springs to mind. It's just a part of Laurel and Hardy, which I regret. I mean, looking back now, I do regret. There is a Blu-ray out, which I did say to you before we started, I will be getting. So that's how I'm going to catch up on that one. But for me, silence, it was Harold Lloyd, because I used to like to watch his all of his stunts, shall I say.
Yeah, I think, if I remember rightly as well, that when the usefulness of people like Harold Lloyd, Laurel and Hardy, Charlie Chaplin, etc., sort of like lost favor, that they tried to repeat them on TV. TV was the new medium, and I think that they bunched them into TV. And it was like, well, what can we do about the silent aspect of it? There's no organ or anything now, so all we can do is do our own music to it. Where can we get this stock music from? And then the next thing was, do you let the silent film play out, or do you do a voiceover? Now, with Harold Lloyd, I always remember the voice in Harold Lloyd. It was like, oh, Harold, how are we going to get around with this one then? In this sort of like weird, screechy voice. But it sort of fitted in. When it came to Laurel and Hardy, when they were showing their stuff in the 70s, and so from when I was watching it, they didn't do too many of the shorts. It was always the sound stuff, and it was the sound stuff that I liked. But I did see silent stuff, and that's where I'm saying I will talk a little bit about my favorite silent one, because it is so iconic. I can't, every time I think about it. In fact, I think about Alan and Mainmeister every time I think about it, because, not to give spoilers away, Stan Laurel's got a kilt in it. But anyway, we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But yes, I'm a little bit like you. The silence get missed, and I think it's a bit of a disservice from what I've read in the book, because they do say there are some real gems there. But they are samey. They are of a time. They were trying to bring out the same stuff across all of the All-Stars. So Charlie Chaplin would be slapstick. So Keystone Cops would be slapstick. So Laurel and Hardy would be slapstick, etc., etc. I do believe that Laurel and Hardy's longevity is because they were a double act. There aren't that many double acts that you can think of that were going on. I mean, Charlie Chaplin was a solo, Buster Keaton, I don't know, Charlie Chase, all of those were singular, so you got to turn around and say they worked together, and I think they played off of each other, and that's probably why it works so well, because even though Oliver Hardy is the bully, he's a light-hearted bully, if you see what I mean. Wouldn't hurt a fly. Only kicks him up the arse because he deserves being kicked up the arse for being so thick.
But he always feels, but he always feels bad about it after, doesn't he? So,
about it. I said to you earlier, just before we came on, that the scenes that really are magic to me is where those two gang up on somebody else, like Charlie Hall's in Tit for Tat, which
the
we'll
music
talk
box,
later on. But also when Stan will suddenly get a backbone and kick Ollie up the arse, and there would be a fight, and suddenly Ollie would back down. It's almost like, whoa, you've never done that to me before. Right, we'll end it there and we move on, and that's brilliant. You know what I mean?
But it's just for the silence though. One thing that missing. There's one particular show they done, Oliver the Eighth.
All right.
And the butler is completely mental, like Mae Bush was playing the part. As she wanted a husband, it was going to be Oliver. And you talk about the physical comedy, but then the butler just looks at Stan and he says, "Nice weather we had tomorrow." Yeah, that's that. See what I mean? That's the silence. Give you a certain service, but they can't give you that.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. And that's what I always used to miss in. That's what I miss in the silence. If you understand what I mean.
Yeah.
That's just comedy gold to me. It's nice weather we had tomorrow.
I just think sometimes it's just a little bit of a shame that the silence only get mentioned now in documentaries. There'll always be somebody that will be the front man of a documentary about something, and they will talk about the silence. They'll run a 3-minute clip of some silent fit that he will turn or she will turn around and say is my favorite silent film. And that's all you'll hear about it. And then it will go straight into the talkers and then colorization and everything else. Everything else in the timeline goes. It's almost like the silent era was a 5-minute section in the last 100 years, where actually silence were around for 20 or so years. And it was probably one of the biggest growth markets that you'll ever have. Studios would just suddenly set themselves up and get their stuff out there, and it was only the ones that of quality that kept putting the money back into the business that survived into the 30s, 40s, and so forth. Which is why you don't hear too much about the Hal Roach Studios, and you now hear about Warner Brothers and Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer and 20th Century Fox, because they just basically didn't update and didn't have enough material. They wanted to go along the line of having people under contract, and contracts were starting to come out of it after what was it? Was it Betty Davis that won her case where she was tied down and she said she was a slave? So she took MGM to court, won. Lost her case, but won on the basis that she got the sack or something and moved somewhere else, and other people then started coming in saying that they demanded it. The unions got involved. Big thing. Anyway, let's see if we've got some more comments now. Right, so we've got. Did you see that? Well, there's a chap who's got so much output, it's unbelievable. That's Mike, got his own channel, absolutely fantastic. Mostly films, but he does absolutely everything. He's doing gaming stuff now. He even did the other day a review of Coca-Cola 3000, a new brand of Coca-Cola, and wanted to know whether the taste was as nice as normal Coca-Cola. He does absolutely everything. You need to definitely go and watch that channel, because every time I go and see it, it's something different. Do you know what I mean? As well as the live chats, which I love anyway. So after we've got Delboy, you know what we're going to have, don't we? We're going to have Denny, because that's what he does. You know, you have to do that. It's the law, apparently. You've got to read it out exactly as it's typed. So Denny, Denny, something like that. And then he goes, "I hope you're both well." Smiley face. We are. Thank you very much. We hope you're well. Like I say, most of the people that I can see actually making comments do have their own channels. Do look them up. Some of these people may be our friends, but I tell you what, they've got their own stuff as well, and it's very interesting indeed what they do. So then we've got Maymeister again. Always thought it was interesting. They had different wives across all the shorts they made. Mm-hmm. Yes, they even played their own wives.
Twice too. Yeah, twice
too. But most of the time it would have been May. It would have been that actress that I was talking about before, wasn't it? Mae Bush. Mae Bush. She played, I think, the wife more times than anybody else, although they did have different actresses. Yes, they did. That's quite true. And I think it's because of the jobbing acting that Hal Roach Studio had. Like I said, it'd have people under contract, it'd have extras as well under contract, and he would mix them around. So they'd be on a Laurel and Hardy recording one week and then be over to Charlie Chaplin's, you know, or to I don't know, the Keystone Cops the next week. And then all they'd do is change their dress and have them in the background or whatever it was. You know, it's whatever it was to keep them on the payroll, to have, because they were paid weekly as well, or they weren't really paid per film. They were on the weekly payroll. So yeah, different times, isn't it? You can imagine. Where do you work for? I work for a film studio. Wow, what do you do? I don't know. Each week it's different. I'm on a street call. I'm in a car the next week. What do you say must be the most interesting period of time I can ever think of? Would you also say, and I don't know if I've already asked this question already, that there's an actual, a sort of like an accurate portrayal of the era that they were making their films in? Because although they did period pieces on occasion, Stan sometimes would be an aristocrat, sometimes would be a vagabond, like I said earlier on. But it was always in black and white because that's what they had. It was always either in the countryside or, I mean, Stan Laurel and Laurel Hardy are on at the moment. Look, and they're driving around Los Angeles. I recognize that. That's Beverly Hills with all those palm trees. I mean, it's iconic. You can't really miss it. But what I'm trying to get at is that a lot of their stuff was trick photography where they weren't really driving along. It was
you saw the screen too.
A lot of their stuff would be the studio, but they did do some outside stuff. You could tell it was outside stuff. I mean, when they're on top of houses, on top of their roofs of houses and so forth, some of that was not trick. That was up on the roof, and you could see the grass and the buildings that looked like they'd only just built them. They looked rough, like they were just cheap a holiday accommodation. And it probably was at the back of the Hal Roach Studios, to be quite honest. It's probably where some of the actors lived and the technicians. But what I'm trying to get at is you saw them in as handymen, delivery people, door-to-door salesmen, all that sort of stuff. And we know that all of that was going on. But would you say it was quite accurate of the time that there weren't people really working in factories that much, or they were working in the docks? Or
well, yeah, I mean, it's all, for me, it always excuse me, it always seemed of the period, and I suppose that's how good the program was, really.
Actually, just showing the back, it's just amazing. We're actually in I think that's that's
the sawmill. Yeah,
that's the sawmill episode, isn't it? It's the
Busybodies, that one.
Busybodies, yeah. and that's a famous one. And if you look, it's a lumberyard, but you can tell which bits of the real lumberyard where you saw that big truck coming on the lifted planks. But then you can see here, this is Hal Roach Studio where they just brought the car in.
But you can tell that from the film. You can tell the film grain on like the recorded scenes for the mill itself. You can tell the grain compared to the one inside. Yeah. But it adds to the charm for me. That does. It's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Here we go. He's going to get a smack in the face.
Mm.
There you go.
Yeah, a gag that was done time and time
again. So yeah, I mean, we covered that. I do think on occasion they were spot on with the times that things were so hard that you worked in the docks, that you worked in these lumberyards, that you were door-to-door salesman, you were a delivery person. They had those pants on, those denim jeans, those iconic, strapped denim jean work clothes like they've got on there. Look, with the X at the back, that goes around. You just see them all the time, and you think, was that really a thing?
I mean, you listen to the shorts as well. There's sometimes they give themselves away. I mean, like one of my favourites, Below Zero. This lady picks the window up because I'm playing instruments. Says, "Cooey, Mr. Whiteman." And that was just like a common saying to people, within jobs, Mr. Whiteman.
Yeah.
Whether you could get away with it nowadays, I don't know. But that was of the period, wasn't it? Yeah. So yes, I think it was a good representation. But if it wasn't, it was damn well acted. That's all I can say. But for me, it was more or less spot on. It seemed to be locked through the depression all the while as well, most of the time.
Yeah.
So
well, like I say, there is that one that we'll talk about. Or if we've got time, we'll talk about it in Them There Hills.
Oh yeah,
which Alan and I are always talking about the episode after that, which is called Tit for Tat. That introduces us to the Hall family, but they go out into the country, and it's during Prohibition, and it was a still mine that caused all the problems with that, because they were fighting the cops about a distillery that was out in the sticks. They had to get the stuff, and they poured it down a well, didn't they?
That's
of that
correct,
went straight down that well. And there they were thinking that they were drinking water, and it was just iron or something in the water.
It's the iron in it.
Iron in the water. It's not.
It tickles.
For God's sake. So absolute classic story there. But again, that's showing Prohibition off. So yeah, I mean, they did bring things into there. So we'll start bringing some of the stuff again, because we just go past Main Meister here. We go to Bonsai. He's just said, "Look, Miranda." There we are. We know that. Moving down, Alan has said today, why do you think they simply don't show Laurel and Hardy, Harold Lloyd, etc. anymore? And I think he means by TV. And my simple answer to that is what we said at the beginning, which is that the children's channel that we used to love and watch, that they'd have on in the early morning or mid-morning, and in the afternoon before the news, and over the Saturdays and all that sort of stuff, basically has gone. First of all, it's got to its own channel. They got CBBC. Secondly, licensing. You have to negotiate the capturing of being able to bring out this stuff for broadcast ability on the channel. And the third one, I think, is that they had to negotiate then not with the studios anymore. I think this time it was with the physical media who had the license. And if they had an objection because they wanted you to buy the DVD, rather than you can record it, at home off of the TV, then basically they're going to block you having that on. So I think it's a culmination of all of those, unless you can think of something else.
There is just one more explanation, whether I'm right or whether I'm not. It's not diverse enough for today's audience. If you look at the actors in it, they wouldn't class that as diverse enough for a start, and a lot will get offended by the way people used to live their lives. Yeah. That's the way I'd see it.
Do you think that was going on in 2005? That was the last time it was shown, apparently. 2005.
All this diversity nonsense that's out now, the woke stuff. that wasn't around back then. I mean, it's just over the top now. I mean, if you think is it talking picture? They always put something on. This program might offend. Blah blah.
Oh
Blah.
yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, the majority of I think the majority of the Laurel and Hardy films and all that was all white, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So I'm not saying it is, but it's always a possibility because you know what, we can't offend and stuff like this. I mean, how can comedy like this offend? It's a sad situation, but
Yeah. Yeah, and I wouldn't disagree with that. There are they are in certain ones going to shindigs. They would be going to a nightclub type thing. Nightclubs back then would have bands. In those bands, it would be mostly black musicians that would be playing on saxophones and double basses. So at the end of the day, that's looks upon like slavery, and that like all a black person could ever get employment would be
janitors as well,
in a band or
janitors and stuff like that. They'd be portrayed in one way. It's the way things was. It's not the way things are now, but people can't let it go. So it's a sad situation.
I didn't mean to laugh. It's just I've just seen Stan Laurel punch that bloke at the chin. Again. Sorry, I shouldn't have that on in the background, but I just thought, well, I'll put some Laurel and smacked Ollie in the face. Yeah. Anyway, they won't be watching us. Look, they'll be looking at my screen, so we better go past from that. So did you see that? 16 watching, 4 likes. Let's show the guys some love. Oh, that's really nice of you. Yeah, please do like us if you can. I must admit, if pass it on and all of that sort of stuff. We here are just having fun, talking like as if we're in a pub about Laurel and Hardy. It's nice that you guys are around. If you've got your own memories, please put them in the comments. I'll be reading them out. It will intermingle with our own nostalgia for that, especially if you're talking about a particular episode that I've got written down as my favorites. Remember, I don't watch Laurel and Hardy every day. I go back to them possibly once a year, and I'll watch certain ones, and I won't watch 106 in one go and then move on to something else. So you might talk about an episode that I haven't thought about in a long time. You know what I mean? And that'll make me want to go and start watching stuff again. So there you go. You got a reason for it. Cy Robson says, if silent, we wouldn't have got the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia, possibly the funniest musical number of all time, in my opinion. Yeah. I wouldn't go. I would say it's pretty much very funny, isn't it? I mean, it's probably the most watched clip of Laurel and Hardy is that singing at the bar with the mallet and so forth. I mean, it even was re-released in this country, wasn't it, as a single in the 60s or 70s?
I bought that one.
Actually went in the charts.
Yeah, I bought that.
So, it's amazing how the popularity of that particular clip makes you go out and buy the song that would have come out in the 40s. No, 37.
Yeah, let's not forget though, Oliver Hardy had a wonderful voice.
Oh yeah.
I mean, he done it in Bratz, didn't he? Singing to the children, go to sleep, my baby. He had a wonderful voice, and I mean that hadn't got auto-tune or nothing like they use nowadays. That was just his natural voice, because there's nothing.
That's right.
I
think he was in a choir. Not sure. Like I said, I've read this book and I've read huge sections of it, especially around. This book is, by the way, I did show it at the beginning. It's quite a thick book, but the reason it's such a nice book to have is that it takes a particular film, a short, and then there'll be 5 to 6 pages talking about how that production of that film was. Yeah, plus it'll tell you everything else about it, like who wrote it and all of that sort of stuff. It even tells you whether that particular short sold more than the short before it, because they were looking at the money intake, and it was the money intake of each short that basically put out the money into the next one. So if the money from the last one made more money, you'd probably have more money go into the next one. If it made less, it would either get the same or less. And if you were then on a streak of less and less and less, then less money would be going in, and you would then suddenly be out. It was just the harshness of the film industry back then. Stop laughing at my bloody stuff that's going on in the background.
Sorry, he's got that brush.
You miserable git. I can see exactly what you're doing. Yeah, he's going to pull the bristles now out of that brush. We all know what goes on. Right, so then we've got, did you see that? Yeah, there he is. Did you see that? I appreciate the kind words, my friend. However, your channel is awesome, if not more than your 2-hour blog. There's a lot of coverage. Yes, it's amazing how something that started off as being 20 minutes suddenly went to 40, then an hour, and then it didn't jump from an hour to an hour and 20 minutes. It went 2 hours. And then every time I do it now, it's around the 2-hour mark, and I don't see it going shorter anytime soon. It's just I've got a lot to say that goes on in my week.
And you complain about my comments being so long as well.
Oh, yeah, chapter and verse. Geez, I have to take a gulp of drink before I read out yours. It's like War and Peace. Flip your neck, it's like, woo! I thought, bloody hell, this is from one bloke, by the way, guys and girls. You know, then the next one will be one line. Yeah, it's great. Thanks. Hey, just read that like that, and then I've got one like that. No, long may you keep doing that for me, Denny, because I like somebody to back off of, and I've said it before, and you know, you're a great mate to have on, and you're a great mate to know, is that you don't necessarily agree with everything I say, and you will have your own opinion, and you don't shy away from stating it, and I don't shy away from saying it.
Yeah.
There, I'm going to read it out. You know, I'm not going to censor you. You know what I mean? This is a person that would be talking to me like it was in a pub, and I tried to make the comments as if I was talking to you in a pub. I was reading it. I said, all right, then, Del. And I read it out. I try to do your voice, but there's no bloody way am I doing your voice.
Just bash the vowels. You'll soon do it.
I can't bash the vowels. I don't even know what a vowel is. I keep thinking that's an animal. That's a vowel, isn't it?
Oh, dear.
That's where my education goes. So, thank you very much. Did you see that? You know full well, matey, that your stuff is great. So anyway, let's have a look. Oh, Alan has got worst case of gout I've ever seen. What do you suggest, doctor? Drink water and lots of it. Yes, that's what we were talking about in the Hills. It was the doctor that basically said he needs to get lots of rest and lots of fresh air and drink the water out there. And that's when they got into their car and they drove off, and they were just going to look for somewhere where they could stay in the fresh air. And that's where they pulled over when they saw something that was off the side road. Just decided that's where they were. I remember there's a joke in that. He knocked on the door swung open, he went in, and then he came out and went over to Ollie. And Ollie said, was anybody in the house? And he said, yeah. Who? Me. But then when I came back out, and he just went.
That's the bit I like. I got the worst case he's ever seen. He said it's too much eye living, and he says, but we live on the ground floor. And he said, I suggest you go with him as well. Oh, dear.
If anybody is interested, that's from Them There Hills, which introduces the whole family, which are in twice. They did another short, and then they were in a sequel called Tit for Tat, which we'll hopefully talk upon a little bit. And Gary T has said, I will always love Laurel and Hardy, but my best mate won't watch it because it's black and white. I even put it on to show him one day, and he went home. Yes, and we're hearing this far too many times. I've told you this before, that there was another person that turned around and said he had trouble watching black and white, made him feel sick. I don't know why something that's lacking of color would make you feel sick, but apparently it did. And others that are put off by it because it's not color. Well, I don't get that myself. Black and white is a color. It works very, very well in science fiction and horror because of the light and dark. In comedy, probably less so, but I think it has a sort of like charm to it in black and white.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of, like you're just saying, touch upon the films. I was saying to you, I watched The Last Man on Earth.
Yes.
It's more atmosphere. Well, it's the atmosphere. I've heard some films, The Day the Earth Caught Fire. Many films that was shot in black and white. It's, as you say, it's got a special charm to it. Something a colour film could never, ever copy. Never. Brilliant.
I've just seen the bandsaw go. I've got to stop watching that now. I might have to turn that off. That's absolutely totally distracting now. However, I will say this about black and white as well. I bet the makeup artists had to do a hell of a lot more than they do in the color, to be quite honest, because of the face packs they've had to do to get the faces lit right. So they would have done putting mascara and all sorts of stuff into things. So yeah, I believe, black and white, actually there's probably a lot more going on behind the scenes, you know what I mean? But there we go. What did we do here? That was Gary. So we moved now to Bonsai Master. My favorite episode is Busybodies. Do you remember Busybodies?
Oh, do you? The one we've just watched.
Yeah. So do you want to talk any more about it?
Yeah, well, it's one of there's so many scenes in that, pulling the sink off the wall, hitting his head. The one where obviously he shaves those bristles off him with a plane, and you can actually fit the sound of. I mean, that's another thing as well. The sound effects. You know, as it's going across, it's just taking it off his face.
There is a favourite sound effect in it, which they do an awful lot, by the way, and it's with. It's like a twang, right? So he's sharpening the blade of his plane, right? And he will go
ding,
like that, and you can hear it go ding where the blade would be. Or if they got a bow, like a
saw, wasn't it?
He will bend it back and he'll let it go, and it'll make a twang that was go, and go, smack him on the head as if it's like flipping great big 100-weight object and hit him on the head when it was just the blade of a saw. So yeah, the one thing we haven't talked about, which is my favorite part of that particular scene, which is the window frame. Although these are all skits, we've got to remember they were written as gags. So Stan would have said, I've got this great idea. We'll have Stan trapped in a window frame made out of wood, and I will be trying to get him out of all sorts of situations, and I can imagine that I will twist him around and all sorts of stuff, eventually falling off and smashing the whole of the frame, making the whole thing pointless. And then he'll throw in the odd audio gag, like, can you open the window, please? And he'll go to the real window and open the window. I don't know why he did that when he was talking about the window frame that he was stuck in. But it's a classic. I don't know why, but it's one of those ones where when I think of Laurel and Hardy, there are scenes that I remember. Like, I can remember the episode where they're putting an aerial on top of the roof. I remember the episode where they're in a lumberjack and there's a window frame. I remember the episode where they kept going from back and forth between their shops, and they were eating some sort of marshmallow every time that they left. I don't know why they were doing that. That's what would happen to me when I'm not thinking about watching them for a long period of time. When I go back, I go, that's the reason why they were doing it.
It's like that one you're watching now, Dirty Work. At the end, Oliver falls into the water. He turns into a chimp because it's like a regressing thing. He can lose.
That's right. It's a mad scientist who's doing a rejuvenation.
But he goes back too far, doesn't it?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, but this is a classic, though, isn't it? Like the chimney sweep routine. This is used so many times within a lot of Nardi skit with the bricks we was talking about, dropping down the chimney, hit him off the head one by one. That was a skit. It's so many episodes.
It's the setup. If you look at this here, they're going to spend 3 minutes putting this cloth on this mantelpiece. They'll put a clock on top of it. They'll keep the weight on there. He'll go behind the cloth and he'll put the brush up there and he'll say, you need to put the extension on it. All of that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
What's going to happen? That whole cloth's going to fall off and it's going to hit him on the head.
Yeah.
It's the setup. It's like you've seen this whole setup and you think, my God, it's taken so long to get to this point. And then bang, there you are. There's the gag. Smack right on the head.
Yeah.
And you're going, wow. And that's where I think a lot of comedy doesn't work these days, because
exactly.
When you're watching something and you've got to get used to a character and feel something for a character, you've got to therefore have an emotional contact with it. So if you cut a film down or if you cut a series down, you're not going to have that emotional attachment because you've not got into the character enough. You can't be upset that the character died unless you've lived with that character for several seasons or several episodes or whatever. So this is where I'm saying the setup here is how long it takes to do it properly, and then it just die in 1 second. Just
yeah.
Like that. There you are.
You know, your comedy. I mean, like Freddie Starr. I always remember Freddie Starr. He'd come on and he'd say, I can't stand it when people mime to the song. Straight away, you know, he's going to do the speeding up and the slowing down. It's, as you say, it's the setup. It's the actual setup to it. And, yeah, see what I mean? You remember that. It was so funny. Every time he'd come on, he'd do it time and again. And it was as funny then. And he'd fall off, walk to the edge of the stage and fall off. You always know he's going to do that. Tommy Cooper, inside and outside that magic thing. And he'd open the curtain, you know, pretend he'd hurt his hand as he'd hit it. Or when he's trying to catch that ball and then he'd hit himself on the head. He was waiting for it. You know, it was like what they must have learned from Laurel and Hardy. That got it done.
My mum loved Freddie Starr. She went to see him at the Birmingham Hippodrome. He used to do lots of things.
Yeah.
And sort of like sort of dinner things, you know, where a company would hire an act to be an after dinner speaker, or they'd have an actor that goes up while you're having your meal. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the thing about it is that my mum said Freddie Starr's got a lovely voice, but he's always pissing about.
Oh, yeah, he does.
I always just wanted him to sing a song, but he would not sing a song without taking the piss or making a joke about it. And she'd give me a perfect example. So there's this lovely song, right? She'd say it's like, see the tree, how big it's grown. And I remember long ago, it was just a twig. It'd say it was just a plank. Just a plank. And they said, I surprised her with a donkey. Should have been a puppy. I surprised her with a donkey. And then everybody's taking the, you know, because they know the song so well, because it's Honey. That's right. The song's called Honey. Everybody knows the words to Honey, but it changed the words from twig to plank, puppy to donkey, all sorts of stuff. And she'd go, oh, he's got such a great voice. He's making me laugh. But you know, he just
his skit was Old Shep, wasn't it? He used to sing.
Old Shep, yeah. And you know, and then he'd come out and do his Mick Jagger impression, you know.
But these are the things these people learn from these two, you know, how to set something up. Because you know, we put something on, and me and my dad. I mean, my dad's a massive Laurel and Hardy fan like me. You know, we sit down together. But my dad has got the same sort of comedy elbow I've got. He just loves. He says, here he comes, and then there's the payoff, and you laugh all the while. And as you say, it's such a shame today's comedians can't do that. I mean, Miranda, it tries. It's got physical comedy, but I will say there's now payoff. I think that's the word. There's now payoff, really.
Yeah, but then when they see that and it doesn't work, and then she's off, that I think it deters other comedians that are up and coming to think that no longer works now. She died a death with that, so I'm not even going to try, and therefore that whole art of being able to do something like that dies with it, and therefore it's a shame. So you can't blame Miranda for that, but you can say you should have tried harder.
I think I must admit the last physical comedian who used to do stand-up was Lee Evans. I mean, I've been to see Freddie Starr and Lee Evans, and they were fantastic physical comedy. I mean, then you've got like Mrs.
He had that rubber face, though. I always thought he looked like Norman Wisdom. I just thought he was like Norman Wisdom. But yeah, he is that. He's got that face. It's like a rubber face. He's got them big ears, and he just drops. And he'd drop his voice down and sound like Satan or something. All of a
But
sudden.
again, I watched one of his interviews, and he said he took a lot of his ideas from Laurel and Hardy. So that's why I loved him so much. But
now there's one that you're going to love next, because the next one is a reminiscence. It's only one line. But look what it says. My favorite is Murder Case.
One of my favorites.
Carry on. Over to you. Murder Case. It's not down on mine.
The Laurel and Hardy murder case. Basically, they're down and outs. They're sitting on this. It's just like a general scene. Again, another one of their setup scenes where they're sitting on this harbour, and Stan looks in this newspaper that had just fluttered by, and he notices Ebenezer Laurel has died, and he's left £3 million in his will. So they go to this house, and a lot of his other relatives turn up there, and they basically show him to the room. But this butler is like one of these creepy ones. I mean, he's got false teeth, and when he shows them to the room, it's like this creepy room, and he pops his head round the corner like that, and he's got like them teeth that can come out the front of his mouth like that, so it looks like this. Of course, you know the lads, but the one part, I'm in bed, and I don't know whether he needs to go to the toilet or something, but basically I think the house is haunted, because I see this picture on the wall, and it's like this skeleton picture. Of course, when it's thundering and lightning, I think this skeleton's in the room, and they go under the bed sheets. But one of the two things that I remember about this, the lampshade has got like this white cover over it, because a lot of the house has been covered with white sheet, and it snags like on his just say the back of his trousers there. As them walking through the house like this, I think this ghost behind them. Of course, everybody comes out and they all think this is ghosts after them. But to cut a long story short, they try to go back to bed, and this bat comes through the window under the sheet, and he's flying around the house with this white sheet on. I think.
Oh God!
But I mean, it's one. I mean, you can only tell it. You got to see it to believe it, and find the gags. And
because you don't want to think too hard about it, because if you were to tell somebody I was scared in a house because I saw a sheet moving around, right?
Yeah,
you'd laugh. Somebody. I mean, that's what kids do on Halloween: is they put a sheet over them, cut two eyelids out, and say, "I'm a ghost." Right?
Yeah.
Ghosts are not like that. If you watch horror films now, we're talking. With their, they look like zombies, and all the creeping flesh, and their hands are, and they are. That's a ghost, right? Not a white sheet with two little eyes cut out of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's okay.
I don't even remember one. I mean, they've done Oliver the Eighth, which was sort of the same story, because at the end of the murder case, they wake up, it's been a big dream. And then they fall in, and it's like Oliver the Eighth. That was more or less the same, and that was where the butler said it was a nice weather we had tomorrow. But then they've done a story later on, which is another one of my favourites, which I didn't list actually, called The Live Ghost, and it was the captain of the ship. Do you remember that chap who used to play the drunk all the while? I'm just going ashore for a little tin.
Yeah.
He was actually teetotal in real life. He never touched anything. And he fell in this vat of I don't know what it was. It was like white paint.
And you wondered to yourself why they didn't Buster Keaton, because he was a drunk.
Yeah. But he went aboard the ship, because the captain said, if anybody mentions this is a ghost ship, I'm going to turn their head north to south.
That's right, yeah.
And then, of course, at the end of it, they see him, and they call it a ghost ship. Of course, they turn their heads, and then the feet are looking one way, and the heads are looking the other way. It's
that's the eventual pun line, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's you've got to watch them to appreciate how it all builds up to that part. But there's some fun, because Stan sleeping in the bed with him. I always remember Stan sleeping in the bed, and Stan gets out the bed, and he was talking to Stan, and all of a sudden the little porthole, he's outside, and he looks at him through the porthole. Well, that chap who got drunk was lying next to him, and of course he touches the port. He looks at Stan, and he's talking to him, and he looks at the porthole like he's putting his hand on the porthole now, and it's Stan. And of course, he comes up and he thinks it's a ghost. And that's when he goes to the captain and says, I've just seen a ghost. And that's when it's brilliant. Yeah, as I said,
you tell that really well, and it makes me want to go and watch it right now.
Oh, it's
I have to
brilliant.
say, a lot of these are very. I mean, you can imagine when a story is being pitched for these. They were making these films within a week, weren't they? They
Yeah,
filmed them in a week. The all they needed was 6 lines to tell the story. Stan and Laurie in this. This is what happens, and madness prevails or something, and that's all you'd need. Presented and say, yeah, and here's now go away. Here's $30,000, which would have been a lot of money back then. Go make it, and there you are. And that's how it was. They'd written it, filmed it, edited it, done the music score for it, and it'd be out like that, and it would be the film of that week. And the next week would be another one.
It was just the simplest things. Another one that done another fine mess. James Finlayson was in that one, the stink eye, where he used to look at him with the one eye.
Yeah.
And he was playing Colonel Wilberdeer Buckshot, and he's going away on vacation. And obviously they broke into his house. So they think, oh, well, we've got 6 months, because they hear the butler and the maid saying, I'm going to go away. I'm going on holiday as well. Boy, he's gone. They won't now. So anyway, them left the house, and all of a sudden, they hear somebody at the door, and he introduces himself. He says, oh, good day, man. It's Plumtree. My name's Plumtree. And one of the things all through it, he calls him Mr. Appletree. He goes through all the different ones. He goes, my man, it's Plumtree. It's Plumtree, my man. But it's Stan has to play like Agnes and the woman and the butler as well at the same time.
Yeah,
and of course, Oliver Hardy goes through all his skit. When he used to have his little lorgnette where he used to put on his nose, he was playing Colonel Buckshot.
Yeah, and he'd sort of do the aristocrat thing of being upper class by the nose upwards.
That's it. He talked to him like that, and with his things on like that. And just a brilliant. Obviously, James Finlayson comes back, and of course he's still playing the part of Buckshot. As you can tell, it's just brilliant. If nobody's ever watched another fine mess, it's superb. Everywhere, you'll just be crying all the way through it. Fantastic.
Brilliant. I'm pretty sure you made Colin happy there by mentioning all the way through what the murder case was. Absolutely brilliant. I hope it's encouraged other people to go and watch that as well.
Yeah.
Danny has put, back in the 80s, I watched them on TV every time I knew they was on. Yes. I mean, I think a lot of us were like that, I think it was easier back then to know that if it started at 9:30 before Christmas, it would be every 9:30 that there would be on. You didn't have to wait a week. You knew it would be every morning at that time. They'd be showing those, and it would be for half an hour and so forth. And so it was very easy to go, when I get up, I'm putting that on and I'm going straight there. And it just started the day off right for me. It was like, starting off with a joke. Now I start work. Now I get up and I start work. It's not that isn't starting life with a joke, is it? So it must have been wonderful, really, to start off with a laugh. You know what I mean?
Well,
all we do now is listen to the news, which is doom and gloom and go to work and all that sort of stuff.
Well, the thing is, I must admit, when I used to feel down sometimes, I used to put one on, and it was one of those that was like an aphrodisiac. He'd just pick you up straight away. How could how could you be down watching one of those?
I'd be in trouble with that though, because I'd put one on and say, I want to watch another one now.
Yeah.
I'm supposed to be going to work.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I could see myself falling over on that one though. So then we got Ian Hill, The Ramblings. What's he put? He says, I think it's very sad that a lot of younger ones simply won't watch anything in black and white. I was talking to my son, born in 1990, and he admitted he won't watch anything in black and white, which is a shame. Yeah, we had that sort of similar thing a little bit earlier on, and we said to ourselves that it is sad. It's almost like inferior product, and I don't get that. It's not an inferior product. You know what I mean? I don't read a book, right, and look at the text on it and say, oh, I'm not reading that because it's not in Arial font.
Yeah. Well,
and that's how I look at it. The words are still the same. The story is still the same. Whatever font you put it in, right?
Yeah.
If it's something that's funny, it's funny. Just because it's in black and white. And that's how I tried to. This is how I try to explain it whenever I'm ever getting into a rant over something about whether I'm not going to watch it because it's black and white and all of that. the biggest person to appease is a horror person when it comes to black and white, because you could just turn around and say which is better, right? A black and white Dracula or a color Dracula, right? And the black and white, the light and shadow of Bela Lugosi's Dracula, it looks far more impressive, that studio set of him walking down the stairs with brick walls and everything looking like a castle, than it is something with red curtains and flock wallpaper and wooden panels. Not saying there's anything wrong with that, but what I'm saying is the menace of the black and white bit there is great. Anybody just go and watch an old Twilight Zone, go and watch an old Outer Limits. You will see exactly what I mean. It's just the light and shadow. It just adds.
You just mentioned that, you just mentioned the Twilight Zone there, Del. You put that up.
Oh, I knew that would your gob. As soon as I mentioned that, go on.
you put that up, right, against one of the last lot of the Twilight Zone. I know which one I'd rather watch.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely, every time.
It's nice that it was successful enough to get a couple of seasons out of it. There were a couple of good episodes in it. It's not the same. It is modernized. If it does encourage people to go back and look at the 50s stuff, then I'm happy, because it doesn't necessarily have to appease me, because I know I'll always have the 50s stuff.
Yeah.
Right? If I've created a fan by watching something in the 2000s, which they say it's all right, but you've encouraged me to have a look at something in the past, and then they fall in love with that, then I've started the whole process again, and they'll want somebody else to make another chance at making another couple of seasons of something. That one had the backing of the family member of the Serling residents, I think the daughter. And like I said, they made a modern stab at doing A Nightmare on 20,000 Feet. Not that I want to go into too much detail, because we're talking about Laurel and Hardy. It's not bad. It has MP3 players. It has an audio commentary, where before it was about seeing the monster on the wing. There was a paranoia about something going on. And it works because it's modernized. And then there's the twist at the end, which is different to the twist at the end of the original. And on this one, I did not see it, I have to say, coming. I won't spoil it for anybody on the modern take of the 20,000 Nightmare at 20,000 Feet. Anybody who comes up to me and says, which one do you prefer? I'll tell you every time, the black and white one. Even though I saw that one and didn't think it was too bad, there's no way that it supersedes the 50s version. Or even the film version, because I thought the film version with John Lithgow was pretty good. But what I'm saying is, it's ingrained in me that William Shatner is the bloke who is the person in pain on that plane, and the way that he pauses his words, it just, there's something on the wing, it's there ingrained in me, and it just makes me smile every time I see it. It's like that. But we're going to go away from that. But it is a great shame, Ian. And please keep going on at your younger ones.
Yeah.
We've got to get people to start watching this stuff. Ian Batchelor, not sure if you've mentioned the film where Stan is told to stay at his post until relieved, and you see him eating cans of beans in a trench. That's one of the major films, isn't it? I don't think that's a short. So no, we haven't got to that yet, Ian. We probably will. Did you want to talk about that? I do think that is. Is it Pack Up Your? No.
It might be Pack Up Your Troubles. That one, actually.
Yeah. Not Sons of the Desert.
No, that's in a different setting, that, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to the feature films, let's just touch a little bit about the feature films, because we've done so much on the sound shorts, we've done a bit on the science, we haven't touched about the films. The films came around midway through the short periods of Hal Roach, 1931, around there. But they took over from 1936 onwards, pretty much. The shorts stopped, features were the place to go, and they did, what did I say at the beginning? They did 27 full-length features. So what you have to ask yourself here is why do people talk about the short so much and not too much about the feature films? It's not quite true. They do talk about the feature films an awful lot. In fact, if you ever buy a book like this, like Leonard Maltin's Guide to Films, shorts are not in here. Only feature films are in here. So you will only ever see the feature films of Laurel and Hardy listed in here and none of the shorts. You look up Music Box, it will not be in here. So that's where it's considered big boy stuff, and we are talking films of 70 minutes and 90 minutes and much more reels and much more money, and the story is much more convoluted. I like the fact that the shorts are short, compact. You don't need to know anything about plot, story, or complex. It is just a laugh. The thing about Sons of the Desert, Way Out West, they are still simple films because of the simpler times that they were made in. I mean, you look at Way Out West, it's very simple just to turn around and say, what is Way Out West? Laurel and Hardy are employed to take a contract over to a girl who's just basically inherited a mine or something. Basically all it is they have to go over there, find her, give her the contract. They've done their job. Madness occurs because two people want to cheat her out of that inheritance, and that is the story. 90 minutes made out of that.
For me, the feature films, there were too much padding.
Yeah, so you could turn around and say there was padding in it, and this is where I'm saying that film is beloved, and I'll watch it and say that is one where I can actually turn around and say there wasn't too much padding in it, because they did a skit, and then there was some real acting, and then there was a song, and then there was another skit where it was jokey and all that sort of stuff. Put it all together, 90 minutes. You put something like Saps at Sea on, which is not quite so well known as Way Out West and Sons of the Desert and all of that sort of stuff. Padding. That's because they're on a boat. How much can you do when there's on a boat? It's going to be skit, hardly any story in it. It's just a matter of the boat's got to go from one place to another. That's it. And therefore 90 minutes and it's padded. It's still good, but it would have done far better as a short. And Stan always said the short should never have stopped. They should have done less features, more shorts, but still had feature films, because that's where their native needed to be. It's just he thought the shorts were cut, no pun intended, cut too short too quickly. So basically it took over, it must have been 8 years of their life doing shorts. So there we are. So no, we haven't got to that yet. Did you want to say anything more on the matter? I mean, my feature film stuff is, I do love them, but there are far less feature films that I will talk about than there will be shorts. I could, if they did 45 shorts, I could probably rattle off about 33 of them being my favorites. If they did 27 films, I might be down to 10 that I could.
Just certain say, like you say, sometimes you can recall certain things.
Yeah.
A lot of things that come up into my mind. Fry Diavolo, also known as the Devil's brother, Highwayman. But he obviously it was more about the feature films. Like you said, there was skits, like musical parts in it. Yeah. Now I do like musicals, you know, Willy Wonka and all. I mean, I do like a good musical, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. But that's what I remember of that one. It was more like an opera type thing where he used to sing as the Highwayman or something like that. And then there was one, I don't know, it was Swiss Miss or Bauhunks. Well, not Bauhunks. Swiss Miss, or where they played gypsies. And, And Stan, well, that was robbing people. And Stan says, I'll show you how to do it. And he has to put his fingers on the glasses. Your windows are the way to your soul. And then he keeps talking to him, and then he'd rob him out the pocket.
That's right, yeah.
And then Oliver had tried, and then he'd mess it all up, hadn't he? Yeah. And then the part I remember about that, this well-to-do chap, he's got his fingers in his eyes like this, and he's just watching him. As he's
Ollie might be behind while this is all going on, and he put his hand and he thinks he's putting it in his pocket. He's actually picking the pocket of Ollie or something, and then putting it in his pocket because he's got.
I remember Stan. He goes after the policeman, and he comes back, and he believes that Ollie was being robbed by this chap. So he says, "Oh, and that's my cane. Oh, and that's my bag, and he says, I almost forgot my lorgnette." And he takes this lorgnette, and this bloke was. So basically, he completely robs him of all his stuff, turns it round on him. It's, I mean, as I said, the feature films had got their part.
Yeah.
But there wasn't.
I'm glad that we talked about it because, I mean, like I say, you'd think that we would talk about the features for the longest period of time. But to be quite honest, if you watch the very last film they ever made,
That's okay, wasn't it?
That's okay. There is a fan remake of that on YouTube, which is far better, but it was not Laurel and Hardy. Oliver Hardy, you could see he'd aged and put on a lot more weight. Stan actually was older as well. It just didn't seem the same, watching two oldish people kicking themselves up the ass. And you'd only think to yourself that it'd only been 10 years previous. I think it was actually 8 years since they were on film together. But in that 8 years, they looked like they'd aged 20.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's because of the improvement of film stock, whether it was whatever, or just that's it. They just aged,
I think, Stan kicked himself towards the end because obviously that signed those deals with 20th Century Fox and MGM.
Yeah.
I remember sitting with my nan this one afternoon and A Haunting We Will Go, come on. And I said, I've never seen this one before. I said, we'll sit and watch this. I don't think I even smiled once. There was no gags. There was nothing. Because it was studio. Obviously, the studio had interfered and they'd wrote the script and there was nothing in the script. It was just, that was just Laurel and Hardy, basically, without being Laurel and Hardy. They could have had two cardboard cutouts of Laurel and Hardy. They just didn't have you know what I mean? That was terrible films. I mean, they'd done the Flying Juices when they left the Old Road studio. That was good. Flying Juices was good.
Well, we were also heading into another era then of another comedy duo, which we might talk about as well, which is Abbott and Costello, which was a slightly different double act, more about how Morecambe and Wise would have come along than Laurel and Hardy, because we're talking about two people that really started off, I think, on stage as people that did a skit in front of an audience, like Who's on First, and that's a famous sketch of theirs. It works on radio, it works on the stage, it actually works on TV. They put it into a film. It actually fits just about everywhere. But you can see it was perfect for somebody to do that on the stage. Just come on the stage and say, "Hey, where are you?" "Oh, I was getting the guys up together to play baseball." "Oh yeah, who were the guys?" I said, "Yeah, well, we were having trouble trying to find one because we were getting the roster up together, and we got Who's on First." Said, "Yeah, who is on first?" "No, yeah, that's right. Who's on first?" "No, what? No, what's on second? Who's on first?" And it just goes on, and you just start that whole sketch on. That's all I'm saying. They then came from that environment into films. Laurel and Hardy were more their birth of fire is film, almost, with Stan only coming from the theatre background, vaudeville. So you see what I mean? Abbott and Costello didn't start off as in films and then go to theatre. So yeah, it's a different type of thing. Anyway, we move on. Danny Jukes, what we got here? Love watch you both in live stream. It's like a double act. I know which one I'm. I'm the Oliver Hardy. Then am I?
I noticed you put me under Stan as well.
Yeah. Well, it's just that's the picture. Now, is that a bit like Anton Decker? Is it always that Ollie is on the left? Right. Not sure, right? But I must admit, when I do watch most pictures or photos, he's on the left and Stan's on the right. Not sure. Never really looked at it that closely. Gary then says Delboy needs a bigger TV so we can see it better. I'm happy to have any contributions. I'll buy myself a 70-inch screen if somebody wants to buy me a 70-inch plasma. I'll put it behind here and put it on for you. Not a problem. All contributions welcome. Only joking. What we got then? Gary T. On Normal Wisdom, he was a huge Laurel and Hardy fan, and there's a lot of pictures on Google of the three together laughing. Yes, they did meet up. I believe Charlie Chaplin loved Benny Hill. Laurel and Hardy liked Normal Wisdom, and vice versa. I don't know what Buster Keaton. I did read all of this. There were certain people that they sort of like twinned each other with. So yeah, I do know that Normal Wisdom was a big Laurel and Hardy fan. Yeah.
Bob Monkhouse was another big favourite of theirs as well.
Yeah.
He used to love Laurel and Hardy.
Yeah, the documentaries I've read have all talked about American people that like Laurel and Hardy, like Jerry Lewis and Dick Van Dyke and all of that sort of stuff. I think Mel Brooks on the Jewish side liked Stan Laurel's humor as well. What's his name? Sid Caesar. I think he liked Stan Laurel. Yeah, I have to think a bit more about that one. Colin Thompson, I remember the retro game Sweevo's World with Stan Laurel on the cassette cover. Yeah, I remember Laurel and Hardy the game. I wish I didn't. That was pretty awful. It was in black and white on a Commodore 64, side-scrolling thing. Not particularly brilliant. Do you want to talk about Sweevo's World?
I remember. Well, 3D games was never my thing. I remember it though. But don't forget the cartoon. They had a cartoon as well, which wasn't very good, was it? To be honest.
Oh, you mean Laurel and Hardy the cartoon? Yeah, I was going to talk about that a little bit. It did do over 60 odd episodes. I didn't know that. I thought, it was a short-lived thing that lasted for a couple of years, but they did 60 plus episodes. And Stan Laurel was involved, but only from a writing perspective. He died midway through he died at the broadcast because it came out in 1967. Apparently, he died in 1965. But to get it off the ground as a cartoon, it was in a lot of legal stuff. So they asked him for his opinion about how to do skits for the cartoon, and apparently they used some of the unpublished stuff he was doing on his typewriter into the cartoons, which is why it is a natural progression from the shorts to the cartoon, in the fact that some of the work in there is actually true Stan.
Oh, I didn't know that.
There you are. That's what I know about that. Stephen Taylor, hi Del and Denny. Can you believe Stan Laurel only had 50,000 in the bank and lived in a cheap rented apartment when he died? Charlie Chaplin was worth 450 million. Yeah, this is where I think it's more savvy about Charlie Chaplin set up his own studio. He kept the copyright of everything under his name, and that Stan and Ollie were both jobbing actors that only had their own sort of like negotiational pass for the last 9 films of their life, which was under MGM and Fox, and by then their time had come. So you can imagine if they had their own studio and it was the Laurel and Hardy studio that this stuff was coming out of, and they were funding their own filming and they did out there, they would probably be far richer in their later lives. What I do also know is that Stan Laurel did live in Beverly Hills for a period of time. It's just that you downsize as your money dwindles. So he did live in an apartment block. We know that he lived in an apartment block. We know also that his telephone number was in the telephone directory. He didn't hide it. You could actually ring him up. You could look up Stan Laurel, phone it up, and it would be him, and he would answer the phone. He was not shy to that.
I mean, I'm picking up something. Charlie Chaplin was worth 450 million. How much would that be nowadays?
Because he died in the 70s. Because he won an award, didn't he, at the Oscars? Because he was expedited out of America by the FBI, wasn't it? And for marrying minors and all that sort of stuff, having sex with minors. if I remember rightly. Bought a chateau near Switzerland, was it? Somewhere around there. And was allowed to come back to America to get his statue. He then went over to Britain to open the Charlie Chaplin pub, which is at the Elephant and Castle. I've been there. And a couple of years later died. And then I believe, yes, he was worth millions. I think it's because he kept the copyright. You ever want to now bring out his stuff on DVD and that, you've got to go back to the negatives. You go to the Charlie Chaplin estate. You want to have something with Laurel and Hardy. It's whoever bought the Hal Roach Studios. You don't go to Stan Laurel. You don't go to Oliver Hardy for it. You go to whoever's bought the rights that brought out those movies. And it weren't them. So they weren't next to nothing. Repeats. There was no such thing as you get a repeat commission for every time that it's re-shown.
That's true.
That's built into Charlie Chaplin's contract because he owns everything. See what I mean? So yeah, I have to say that does not surprise me, and it's why Buster Keaton died broke. He had no money. He drank himself to death, and basically all his film work dried up. And with him drying up, he died penniless. Jobbing. It's amazing. I don't know how many people were successful and rich through Hal Roach.
Just Hal
Roach himself.
Which goes back to the thing again about signing over all the gags and everything because he made the money. So
yeah. See what I mean? So it is a shame, but we got the most enjoyment out of the Hal Roach era. So what can we say? I mean, would you have it any other way? From our point of view, we're selfish, and we grab what we got. From their point of view, I feel sorry for them. There you go. So Ian Hill, the ramblings, the TikTok generation just want everything instantly. They don't have the patience for building up defense. Yeah, and I agree with that. I think it started before TikTok. I remember buying vinyl and listening to an album and being scared to death to take the fucking needle off of the record. So having to play every single track until it got to the end because of fear of scratching the record. With a CD, you just skip tracks. I just skip to that one, skip to that one, skip to that one. You never listen to it. So I got to listen to all of the album when it was on vinyl, whether I liked the track or not. And when the CDs came along, and when tape came along with automatic stop, where it found the gap, where you forwarded it and it would go to the next track as well, like a CD skip. That was the end of that. So I think the attention span's gone because that's what we are. If you have 26 MP3s in a folder, you will not go from start to finish. You will choose the ones that you want. So we've turned away from being, I'm not buying an album if I don't like 50% of the album. They'll buy it because they want one track off of it. As long as they get that one track off of it, they're happy. So, yeah, it's a shame. Mainmeister, again, find that hard to believe about Charlie Chaplin, Stephen. Even someone like Tom Cruise probably isn't worth that much. It is hard to believe, but I'm not going to poo-poo it or dismiss it because at the end of the day, Charlie Chaplin is in no way now a person that you mentioned. But he had his time, and there was a time where you want to put up a picture and the money went to his estate. Do you see what I mean? So I really don't know. But what about that property? Is it still in the name of Charlie Chaplin? Like Elvis has got Graceland. Is that building still in the Charlie Chaplin estate?
Yeah, Charlie Chaplin. Yeah, it's been 400 million. Died 1977.
Yeah.
Charlie Chaplin's net worth $400 million.
Yeah. You see, you got to remember it's intellectual property ownership plus the properties that he's actually got. Plus, you know what I mean? If you want to write a book, if there's an autobiographical thing, they have to put in a thanks to the Charlie Chaplin Foundation or whatever it is, Well,
basically, it is right and it's not. He died with a net worth of 100 million, which is worth 400 today.
Right.
That's what it says. So,
But what I'm trying to get at is how much of that property is still in the Charlie Chaplin's
Yes,
hand,
that's true.
because I don't know of his sons and daughters who are still even alive. Because I do know that he had an estranged relationship with his kids. You know, they didn't really know Charlie Chaplin as the, he still had that distancing thing, like go off to boarding school while I sit around my estate type thing. So really you don't have a dad at all. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So when he's dead and when he left the money behind, did he leave the money behind to his wife at that particular time and all that? I know nothing, you see, because I'm not a big Charlie Chaplin fan. Never really followed it through. So that's all I can say about that. Master. Anyway, lads, got to head off to bed as I'm knackered. Thanks for an entertaining stream, lads. Great stuff. No, my pleasure. Thanks very much, Alan. Of course, by the way, you probably put that an hour ago. Just gonna turn around and say that. We're at 10 minutes past 2 hours at the moment, Denny. So we'll probably try go to 2.5 hours and then probably end this because I must admit it's a work thing.
Yes.
So Gary T, what is the one where they run a shop and there's a shop owner across the street and they fight with? This one is hilarious. He wasn't across the street though; it was right next door to each other. They had an electrical store. He had a grocery store. It's the Halls, and the Halls were first seen in them there hills. He'd run out of petrol. The Stan and Laurel were in the out getting fresh air because of the gout, and they've. The main shop owner, Mr. Hall, thought that they were liquoring up his wife, and so had a tit for tat sort of like fight. Tit for tat was something that was in a lot of their stuff, but it was mentioned tit for tat actually in the film episode Tit for Tat. So after one more short, they made one called Tit for Tat. Stan have got an electrical store. The Halls have got the grocery store. They walk into the grocery store as neighbors to say, hey, I'm a shop owner, you're a shop owner, let's be friends. And then discover the fact that it was the people that they'd met on holiday, where it was. Mr. Hall does not want to know anything about Stan and Ollie. Bugger off out of my store. Don't want to know you. That's the premise. So there's no problem with that. Stan goes, okay, if that's how you want to be, we'll leave. The problem is fate happens like anything, right? And there is this skit with an elevator that actually comes up from the street. Okay, that they've got a basement underneath the street. Now the difficulty with it is that you're supposed to operate it from eyesight level, right? But there is an up and down in the basement level. And of course, Stan is the person that's operating it from down there. And he can't see what's going on above. There is a section where Ollie is trying to put bulbs into an electronic sign, which is they're going to be their shop sign. And he's got a ladder leaned on against the sign, but it's also underneath this lift. So Stan's getting bulbs, and the lift lifts up, lifting the ladder up with Ollie still on it. It pushes him over the top of the sign, and he lands on a windowsill right next door. The windowsill happens to be the next door that they just said, don't want to know you, go away, stay out of my shop. You do your thing, I do my thing. So the only way that Ollie can get down is to go through the window and then go through the front of the store, passing by Mr. Hall. That's there's the protagonist part straight away. He thinks now that they're having an affair, Ollie and his missus. So basically, he takes offense to all of that and basically then slurs Ollie's name. That's it. That's all you've got to do with Ollie. You don't have to do anything violent or anything like that. All you got to do is slur his name. As soon as his name was slurred, he went round there and did something physical to Mr. Hall. That meant Mr. Hall had to go round to the electrical store and do something physical to Stan and Ollie. Cue madness for 15 minutes till the very end, where you get the the punchline. That is tit for tat in a nutshell. That is one of my favorite episodes or short. The two together make almost a film. You can watch that and then watch the next one, and you will have 50 minutes, 55 minutes if you put the two together. But if you ever want to know, and I'll mention it now, my favorite is the all-time classic, which won an award, The Music Box, which I might talk about if we've got time at the end, but at least I managed to get tit for tat out of the way. Hills in that statement.
Yeah.
We move on because we've got what is the one where they run a shop. We've just said that, and Alan has come straight back with tit for tat. It is a well-known one. It really is funny, and it's amazing because if you actually read the book, you'll find that that was towards the end of their shorts, and most critics say that their jokes were becoming stale. I do not find a stale joke or sight gag in that production at all.
No.
It's as funny as the first time I watched it, and I can watch it tonight even if I watched it yesterday and I'd still be laughing at it. It is, I don't know what it is. I'm just me. Maybe I'm thick and I'm easily amused, but I'm telling you now, I can watch that all day long. All day long. Thank you, Main Master. That's so bloody funny. Stephen Taylor, as brilliant as they were, though, would you agree that the last 10 years were not quite as good as the third films? And that's what I think we've already touched upon that. But if you look back, we were saying that the feature films took over, and I think they do come across as like having padding in. The skits are there. Some of them are as sharp as a pin, but they're covered by so much other stuff that makes you not be so memorable. You know what I mean? So that's how I am. I think Charlie Chaplin was all about the feature film. Laurel and Hardy, I think, worked better as shorts. Don't know why. Just nature of the way. I think Charlie Chaplin as well was a more visual person. He was a very, very visual person. He was not only like a cinematographer, he actually planned and storyboarded how he was actually going to do certain stuff like roller skating around with the twirl of the cane and the tilt of the hat, and everything was prim, proper. And I think one film, which is well known, which is in his documentary about Charlie Chaplin, took a year to make, and it was just for one scene. It was a flower girl at the corner of a road, and Charlie Chaplin could not get this scene right. He changed the girl, changed the setup, everything. And all it was a blind flower girl that Charlie happens to come out of a cab of, buy the flower, drop the coin into the thing, falls sort of like in love with the blind girl and goes away. But something wasn't working about it. If you look at that documentary, the clapperboard says no word of a lie. Take 1074 when it went into the can. And the scene that he used was filmed 7 months prior to the end of that clapperboard being shut, saying that's it. So the only thing he did was he added a sound effect, which made it work. Because the girl was blind. That's what was it. That was what was saying the scene was wrong. You had to have the bang or the shutting of the door of the cab to make it work, because how did she know? And that's genius, where I've got so much going on in my private life, I can't concentrate on this scene and something's not working, and I will not let this go until it works. And then having all that money to make all those takes. Sacked 3 actresses and then went back to the original one. Amazing. Well known, well documented that. Anyway. Then we've got Stephen Taylor. My favorite short is The Music Box, and feature is Sons of the Desert. What's your favorites of each? Well, we'll go into it. You just mentioned mine. Yours is slightly different, so I will talk about The Music Box. The Music Box is my favorite short. I can talk about The Music Box forever. Very, very easy. Stan and Laurel, delivery people. Given the task of delivering a piano. Why they don't look at a map, I don't know. But they end up at the bottom of where they think they need to be. They find that the place is right at the top of a flight of stairs in Los Angeles, and they've got to get this boarded up piano up these stairs to the house. It is, and we didn't know this at the time, a present for the owner of the house. We didn't know that until the end. What's the problem? Easily, this flight of stairs is very, very narrow. It's the type of flight of stairs where you've got 6 steps, then a flat bit, then a 6 steps, then a flat bit, then a 6 steps, and you've got a boarded up piano weighing half a ton, and 2 idiots like Stan and Laurel trying to get this thing up the flight of stairs. Must be 12, 13 minutes of watching this piano go up so far, and then it goes falling down, and they have to bring it back up. There's nannies trying to get prams past it. There's all sorts of stuff. Everybody seems to be laughing, and they don't understand why they're laughing when they're trying so hard to get themselves up there. Later on, that you learn the gag is they could have delivered it so much earlier by just going up the street a little bit further, because they could have actually have parked their horse and carriage at the top of the hill and just moved it around, and then have been at the front of the house instead of going up these flight of stairs. In other words, they were in the wrong place. But the joke is the delivery of the piano, the destruction, as always, of the living room where it's going to be, using sort of like winches and ropes to try and get this thing in. You can tell straight away there's going to be water somewhere. There was a pond outside. They're trying to get this in, and you find out that the owner of the house doesn't know anything about this piano, and almost like tries to get rid of them by killing them, only for to learn later on it was the wife that had bought it as a present for him. That's the skit. That's the joke. It won an award. It was the funniest short of that particular year. It doesn't sound that interesting, but it's a visual delight. It's absolutely marvelous. There is no padding in it, really. You'd think there is, but there isn't.
No, there's not.
Every attempt is different, and every foil is different.
Yeah,
and it's just funny.
But you said about Charlie Chaplin and his genius. Yeah. And I said it before this started. There was one scene in that was pure genius. Absolute. 4 times I tried to tap this piano up. 4 times and it kept coming down.
Yeah.
Up, down, up, down. I mean, I love that scene where it only tries to catch it and it drags him all down the bottom of the stairs.
Oh, and you see him going down with it, yeah.
But the genius part of that, they go up the stairs, they've got it at the top, and Charlie Hall, who plays the postman, says to Stan and Ollie, well, why have you brought it up the stairs? If you'd have just gone round the back, you could have just dropped it off there. And Ollie says to Stan, well, why didn't we think of that?
Yeah.
So what they did next?
And like I was saying before, the nanny knew this, but just laughed. But then she wasn't going to tell him because they had a bit of a slap fight. And there was a policeman that was there. He could have told them.
But what do they do? What do they do once he tells them that? They carry the piano so they've got the piano there, but they carry it. Now this is the part that makes it for me. They carry it all the way down the stairs to put back on the car to take it round and just put it back in the same position it was.
Yeah, they couldn't leave it up there and then bring it around or anything like that. You stay there and I'll bring the cars around.
That's the genius of writing. Absolute genius of writing. Brilliant. Yeah.
It is the skinny of all shorts. It's got no padding in it. It really is just every foot of that film is just genius. And those steps are still there. And I visited those steps. I've actually walked up them steps. Bloody hell, I tell you what, it's quite high. I wasn't out of breath when I got to the top, but I mean, it weren't like going up the Great Wall of China or out Kilimanjaro or anything. But I mean, it's amazing what a camera trick or a camera lens can make something look bigger than it actually is. It doesn't look quite that tall, right? It almost looks like you're you've got 50 flights of stairs that you're looking at, right? It's not, it's something like 15 or something like that.
Yeah.
But you zoom the camera out, the focal lens goes back, and then it makes everything look like it's bloody tall. Very, very good cinematography. Everything about it I love. Have you got anything to say about Sons of the Desert? Because I don't really.
No. I mean, I've remembered it in parts, but
I mean, if I remember rightly, Sons of the Desert is well beloved because the story is great, but it also sets up that the Appreciation fan club, doesn't it? Sons of the Desert. They're actually called Sons of the Desert, aren't they?
Well, you saying that, I've just remembered what I got in my wallet. There you go. Helpmates. It was Helpmates. There you go.
Yeah.
And that was when I finished in 2002. Yeah. So there it is. Yeah. But that was from years. I mean, I haven't been with them for ages. But
it's just, if I remember rightly, it was Stan Laurel and the Laurel and Hardy fan club, which I'm pretty sure were called Sons of the Deserts, that helped pay for Oliver Hardy's grave and the placard, that Stan left behind there was all, I think, done. And the tendering of the grave is done by the money that comes into that fan club. And I'm pretty sure they're called Sons of the Desert. I'm pretty sure that they've got fezzes and all sorts of sort of stuff. Gary T, I think Music Box is great, but I do think it's a bit overrated and not their best. Yeah, it's each to their own. Like I said, we'll go through the list. You can go through yours, and then we'll pretty much nearly be rounding this up. Of the sound episodes for you to watch that I think are my favorites, they are Perfect Day, Rats, Hog Wild, Helpmates, Music Box, County Hospital, Toad in the Hole, Busybodies, Them Thar Hills, and Tit for Tat of the sound shorts. And before I just give that over to Denny, just wanted to say that County Hospital is very close to the Music Box. Okay, came out the same year, 1932. It was made in the same block of films. In fact, 1932 seems to be my favorite year. And County Hospital, although it didn't win any awards, is just a masterpiece. It is Stan visiting Ollie in a hospital, cue mental goings on. I mean, it's got more, I think it's got more of a wordy joke than slapstick in it, because I mean, some of the lines in it, like, where's my chocolates? You didn't pay me for my last box that I brought. I mean, how nasty is that? It's like, what have you brought? Hard-boiled eggs and nuts.
Yeah. Can you tell me where the aquarium is?
Yeah.
Instead of the solarium.
It is that sort of thing. And it ends not as funny as Music Box, in the fact that what happens is that Stan sits on a hypodermic needle, got a sedative, and he's then driving Stan home because he's been ordered out of the hospital after this doctor's been hanging out the bloody window of this 5-story hospital because of what Stan did with this. Well, I still don't understand why he picked it up, chucked it out the bloody window, because he sort of handed it to the guy, the doctor, and he sort of like tumbled out the window. But I didn't understand why he was picking it up. Anyway, he was lifting it up, and it's a sight gag for Ollie's leg, which is broken. But and then there's other sight gags, like cutting of the trousers so he can put his trousers on. Cuts the wrong side off. He thinks he's cut the wrong side off, but actually he's cut somebody else who's living in the same room's trousers off. So actually, he hadn't cut anybody's trousers other than somebody else's. So. But it is a visual and audio treat that Music Box for me tips it. Now, I said I gave it over to you. Those are the ones I read out of my shorts. Do you want to read out your shorts?
Yeah. The ones I've got, one is Men of War. You probably remember that one where soda. Yeah. And what will you have, Stan? Basically, I got 15 cents. And he keeps saying he wants a soda, and he's, can't you get it through to your mum? We've only got 15 cents. And that was the same with Frank Finlayson, you know, with the stink eye, where he looks at him like that. That's brilliant. Below zero. They're down and out. They're playing instruments in the street. To cut a long story short, they find a wallet.
Isn't that the one where the bird plops into the into the little tin? They think that there's a coin in it. He says, "No, I'm having that." And he looks at it, it's just bird shit.
And then the next thing is this blind man comes along tapping, and he looks down at the floor, picks his glasses up like that, and finds some money on the floor right in front of him.
Yeah,
you know, that's. But to cut a long story short, with that, they go to this restaurant because once they find the wallet, this hoodlum tries to kidnap them, and then this police officer comes along and shoos him away. And he says, for your assistance, thank you. He says, we'll buy you lunch. Well, it turns out it's the copper's wallet that they find. And he, you know, so, and basically Stan finishes with thrown in a barrel with a great big stomach. Phil, you hear him drinking the water. It's absolutely class, that one is. Like you said, Hog Wild, the Laurel and Hardy murder case, another fine mess, Colonel Buckshot. That's a must. That's brilliant. And Laughing Graver.
Yeah, Laughing Graver is the dog.
Yeah, and probably Below Zero and the Chimp are my favourites. That's another one. The Chimp is Ethel, the chimp. It's absolutely.
Am I right in thinking that Ollie has got a tutu on at one point in that, hasn't he?
Yeah, because basically the landlord won't let the monkey in the house, but he wears the tutu and he puts all his clothes on. I don't know how that'll get you through, but there's the scene in there where there's he says, "Oh, MGM's after me," to the lion, basically. It's a story about basically, it's a story about the big top to begin with, and it goes bust, and they all get part of the show. And Stan gets the flea circus, and Ollie gets the chimp. But it's just absolutely fantastic. So them are the ones I'd definitely recommend.
Brilliant. So we've got both of our shorts out the way. I've mentioned about the silence, and we've talked about the features. We've talked about a lot of things. I'd have liked to have touched upon possibly the facial expressions of Ollie a little bit more. I still think they broke one of the film laws, which is you shouldn't look at the camera and basically do facial expressions. But they did that to a plum. It's the way it works. It's the reaction of somebody as thick as Stan and Ollie, who thinks he's hyper intelligent. Stan always seems to be the one who ends up on top. He's the one who's not having the bricks land on his head. That's for certain. So there you go. And then it comes across as Ollie is the lumbering heavy, which is what he is. But he's the lovable heavy. I wouldn't want anything bad to happen to either of them. But anyway, we move on. Colin Jones, blimey, you're still going. One way of looking at it. Danny Duke says, what a great stream. Have had lots of fun. That's what I want to hear. As long as I don't care how long things go on for, as long as people have fun. Colin Jones, my half bottom.
Men of war. Yeah, Men of war.
So I'm just going to end up with something that I've been meaning to do all night. And I was going to bring this in. This is a website that I found the other day. Not only have we talked about books, not only have we talked about physical media and so forth, there is this Laurel and Hardy Central. It is actually called laurelandhardicentral.com. I don't normally shout out websites, but to be quite honest, this one is pretty much there. You can just basically go to any of these. Look, the silent era, the features, radio, compilations. You can watch it all there. Look. So we'll hit the silence for a second. It's an old style type website. There'll be an introduction from the people who maintain the site. And then there are links to every single one of the films, which will then take you into a description of those. So I was talking earlier on about a particular film that I like, which is, getting Philip to wear the trousers, isn't it? Putting pants on Philip. Right. So all we need to do is find that, Putting Pants on Philip. There it is. Look, made in 1927. And there is the information about it, who the cast is, and then you can read the story. So I'll read the story out for you just to end up with this. Millionaire J. Piedmont Mumblefunder Hardy goes to the docks to meet his Scottish nephew Philip. Laurel Mumblehunder is aghast at Philip's appearance in traditional kilt and does all he can to avoid being seen with him as they walk the streets. Philip is also obsessed with the opposite sex and will brave any obstacle to chase a skirt. Now, this is a very early and silent film. You can even see how young they are. My God, I can't even imagine, Stan that young. But look, he's Finwar. He's got the big ears and so forth, and you can just make out Ollie there. But he's got this kilt on. It is amazing, this film. It has the same ending that all comedy films of that era were doing, which is a great big massive fight, right? But you've got Hardy pushing Stan away all the time. But then he has to realize it's his nephew and he's supposed to be looking after him. And all that happens with Stan is he turns around, sees a girl, and he does this funny looking sort of like sideways jump with his kilt on. And you can see his long socks. This is what makes me think of Alan all the time with the skirt, with the kilt and everything. There's this funny little jump, and he's chasing after a girl for which he's supposed to be looking after his nephew. So he has to go after him, even though he does not want to be seen with him. So there's the dilemma of, I don't want to be seen with you, but you're making me have to. And then basically, because it's all about girls and chasing after girls, sort of like a bit like Benny Hill, a fight breaks out, doesn't there? Because wherever there's a girl, there's obviously going to be a husband or a boyfriend or whatever that's going to cause something. And basically, they're going to cower away at the end while the fight continues. It is very early, very rough. But once you watch it, some of the images will stay with you in your brain probably till you'll die. Because it's just like that. I remember seeing it and I can see it in my head now. And I've watched it 3 times in the last 20 years. But I can still plot it in my head. So anyway, then you'll read down here, look, the second entry in the Laurel and Hardy is a typical effort from the team. It is the only time they played leading roles quite unlike their Stan and Ollie characterizations. There's another reason for watching it. It's not quite the same. Regardless, both Stan, Laurel, and Howard cited this film as a personal favorite. Not Laurel and Hardy as we're used to seeing them, but a great comedy nevertheless. And then it goes into great details of saying it's a bit like A Chump at Oxford and Jitterbugs and so forth and so forth. Those are, by the way, A Chump at Oxford is not bad at all. Jitterbugs is not bad at all either. This is just the standout for the silence. If somebody was to turn around and say, should I avoid the silence? I'd say, no, of course you don't, but you won't get as much enjoyment out of the sound. Which one would you recommend out of the silence? I would put them to this. And I put them to this because it's funny. But the other thing is, it's nothing like what they did later on. So you can sort of like look at this as being, oh, wasn't that funny? And then you can get into the reason they were funny by listening and watching the sounds versions where you've got that comradeship and all of that sort of stuff. So it's very easy for me to say why this one is a favorite of mine. So we're just going to read out some more of the stuff. This is just a very good website. I just recommend it. If you want to go to the sound shorts, it's done in exactly the same way. What was your favorite? It was the chimp.
Well, the chimp or Below Zero.
We'll just go the chimp. Look, there we are, written and filmed in 1932. Stan and Ollie work in a rundown circus which boasts more performances than spectators. The circus goes broke, and the owner, Finlayson, is forced to divide its assets among the company in lieu of payment. Stan gets the flea circus, Ollie gets Ethel the gorilla. They take an animal back to their boarding house and attempt to hide it from the landlord. Used to dismiss this one as a minor effort, but repeated viewings have revealed its charms, a partial remake of Angora Love and Laughing Gravy. The chimp can't hope to match the heart of either of its earlier incarnations. No cold winter night, no cute little pup to tug at your heartstrings here. Instead, we get Hollywood's #1 gorilla impersonator, Charles Chara, prancing around in ape drag and acting silly, but silly is the operative word here, and the chimp emerges as the above-average short due to its breezy cartoon-like silliness. You just have to suspend your disbelief a bit more here than in most Laurel and Hardy films. Just a commentary on what he feels. Personally, from my point of view, yes, I get it. The dog is much more cuter, but at the end of the day, how can you not laugh at a bloke dressed up as a monkey suit that's also in drag? Whichever way you look at it, I read that out and I'm laughing just saying that. And you're turning around and saying liberal laughs. No, you got that wrong. I think that comes from somebody who's probably a much more psychic critic than I am. But I look at something as being, if I find it funny, I'll say it's funny. That's how I am. So we're going to end this now with anything that I might have missed. So we've now got Ian Hill, the Ramblings. Thank you for being entertaining and informative too. I've enjoyed discovering new things. Can't wait for the next live. By the way, I'll put ourselves back to there while we're reading this up. Stephen Taylor next week, Hinge and Bracket. And they're both dead, aren't they, now? Hinge and Bracket, I believe. I heard the other day. I thought one of them was still alive, but apparently the other one's died now. So, yeah, they're gone. Another bygone age. Bonsai Master later, guys, and thanks, Denny, for putting me onto this channel. I enjoyed Dell's ramblings. And that's one way of looking at it, ramblings. That is the last comment. I'm going to let Denny say his thing. I'll tell you what, he's going to end this show because I end them all, right? So I'm going to say thank you so much. Thank you for watching this stream. I have the immense pleasure of speaking to Denny on the phone, but I get so much enjoyment speaking to him in an environment like we're doing here, where we've got some other people that nudge us into another nostalgic area that we might have forgot or not talked about, which is why it works so well. And because I'm not so fast anymore thinking on my feet, so when we're talking I can probably think of something that comes up, but actually if I'd have thought about it, I'd have probably had 5 other things. You guys will think of those 5 things faster than I can, bring it out, and it forces me to bring it out. So I'm going to say thank you for watching. I hope you do sub my friend Denny. He deserves it. His channel is it's quality over quantity is what he will say. I turn around and say it's quality and quantity. There is no difference between the two. The information in there is the quantity. You don't have to have the numbers of videos just to have that. So more and more I look forward to it, but when I do know that it comes out, I know that it is absolutely a stunner what I'm going to be watching. That's all I have to say about it. For the people that watch my channel, thank you very much. I hope you still continue to do so. I try to do my best at getting something out. Work is getting in the way a little bit at the moment, but we will be doing more of these if Denny says yes. I have to sit around and say I will not be doing any more unless Denny turns around and says yes. And we have to both agree as well on what we're going to do next. And sometimes the deliberation is longer than the actual investigation of looking at it all again and then coming up with something that we for us to talk about, especially with me, because I could just blabber on and waffle for for 3 hours. And it might not even be about Laurel and Hardy, or just go off in tangent and talk about something else, as you've probably seen in this stream. So I'm going to say good night, because it's not me that's going to be closing this off. I'm just going to hit the button that says end stream. I'm going to hand this over now to Denny to close us all off. So I'm going to say thank you, guys. On to the next one. Hope you're going to be with us. Over to you, Denny.
Just want to finish on Seidel. That's very kind of you. You've just said thank you very much. And
all right, you're going to turn around and say, "Oh, I'm a git" later on. But, sorry, carry on.
No, but thanks for having me on again. It's been absolutely brilliant since we've been doing these. It's been brilliant, mate. And to everybody who's come on, thanks ever so much for coming on again. It's been a brilliant night again. To remember, just like our Christmas one. This final words. Final words is just for these 2 gentlemen, because they are 2 gentlemen that have left us somebody said, the immortal Laurel and Hardy, never to be forgotten, always to be laughed at. So whenever you're feeling down, guys, just put on a Laurel and Hardy on. And it's much better than antidepressants, trust me. Much better. So, yeah, as I said, thanks for having me on, Dale. Thanks for everybody for coming on. But the last word has to be these two, Laurel and Hardy. And that's it.
Wave. All right, I'll say bye. I couldn't hold my breath in anymore. That's another fine mess you put me into.
For once, you're using my mind.
I thought you were going to do that then.
I've got nowhere to do it, look.
Good night, everyone. Bye-bye.
Oh, dear.